Chapter 1180. While the command center was being slaughtered by Candle Dragon Lord and the others, more than a dozen creation god mechs whizzed over. Candle Dragon Lord and the others immediately abandoned the remaining generals in the camp and faced the creation god mechs that surrounded them. Fire! Candle Dragon Lord's entire body was demonized, and his scales expanded sharply. He turned into a fire dragon that was hundreds of meters long in midair, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws, which stunned countless soldiers below. At this moment, he took the initiative to rush toward a creation god mech. In front of his demonized giant dragon body, the 7 meters tall creation god mech was like a toy. He suddenly opened his mouth and swallowed one of them, chewing it. This brutal scene not only shocked the fleeing generals and ordinary soldiers below, but also made the other kings who were fighting with him change their expressions, especially Crimson Moon and Light King. They had personally fought with creation god mechs, so they had a deeper impression of them than other kings who had only read about them from the information. Apart from the slightly inferior operation, the performance of the creation god mechs was not inferior to a real king. Moreover, once a creation god mech self-destructs, the lethality would be enough to seriously injure a king. This was also the reason why the kings were unwilling to fight with a creation god mech. Be careful of its self-destruction. Light King immediately worried that Candle Dragon Lord would be injured. Candle Dragon Lord snorted coldly. Suddenly, his mouth bulged and he spat out a piece of black iron. Its surface was bumpy, and one could vaguely see that it was a long strip. In some places, it could be seen that it was the shoulder plate and laser tube of a creation god mech. However, no matter how one looked at this charred lump of iron, it was impossible to associate it with the dazzling creation god mech that was covered in gold. This! Light King's pupils shrank, and a trace of horror flashed in the depths of his eyes. Even if he attacked with all his strength, he could not destroy a creation god mech so easily. Moreover, looking at Candle Dragon Lord's appearance, it seemed to be effortless. Seeing this scene, Crimson Moon's eyes narrowed slightly. She clenched her fingers slightly, and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up into an imperceptible arc. She turned around and threw herself into the battle on the other side. She took the initiative to restrain a creation god mech and unleashed her dark domain. These iron lumps made by Old Dog Lin are really hard. They almost hurt my teeth. The scorched black lump of iron that Lord Torch Dragon spat out shot onto the ground like a meteorite, creating a huge pit and stirring up a large amount of dust. He moved his jaw and shook his head before turning around and pouncing towards another Genesis god mecha. At the same time, he swept his tail and knocked away the 5 Genesis god mechas that were surrounding him. 2 of the Genesis god mechas swung their high-frequency particle sabers at his flaming dragon tail, but as soon as the high-frequency particle sabers approached the flames on the tail, they melted like snow and were swept away. Lord Torch Dragon opened his mouth and swallowed another creation god mecha, chewing hard. Humph, do you really think that I only have fire abilities? Old Dog Lin, these toys that you created can only bully these primitive people. Lord Torch Dragon's face was full of disdain as he moved skillfully in the encirclement of 7 or 8 Genesis god mechas. The particle weapons and special rays released by these Genesis god mechas were all easily blocked by him. The Fire Dragon Nation had long since investigated the Genesis god mechas in detail, and they were also aware of the Federation's many high-tech weapons. To him, as long as he knew the principles behind these weapons, he would be able to simulate them with his own body or evolve the corresponding restraining abilities. Moreover, he had reached the pinnacle of his fire ability. With his fire ability alone, he could crack hundreds of abilities and technologies. No matter how hard the Genesis god mechas were and how advanced their systems were, they all failed under the corrosion of the terrifying flames released from his body. Machines had a tolerance limit, and the high temperature he released had already exceeded the heat resistance limit of the Genesis god mechas. Far exceeded. In theory, he could make his body temperature rise infinitely, but once it exceeded a certain limit, he would also be affected. His consciousness would be burned and blurred by the flames, and his brain would stop thinking, living in a form similar to a thing. When that time came, his body would lose control, and his temperature would rise infinitely until his body couldn't bear it anymore. When it rose to a certain height, he would completely disappear from the world. This was his strongest trump card, his life-saving ability, and also the reason why the demon emperor didn't dare to touch him easily. So strong. The Snake King entangled a Genesis god mecha and was having a hard time fighting. The poison that he was good at was ineffective in front of the Genesis god mecha, and he could only rely on his own strength to fight, so the battle was a little difficult. When he sensed Lord Torch Dragon's battle on the other side, he couldn't help but be shocked. Although he had long known that Lord Torch Dragon was very strong and much stronger than kings like them, he didn't expect the gap to be so big. In the siege of 7 or 8 Genesis god mecha, Lord Torch Dragon kept swallowing one Genesis god mecha after another, spitting out pieces of iron lumps one after another. The number of Genesis god mecha present decreased rapidly. Is this the power of Demon Overlord? Light King was fighting fiercely with a Genesis god mecha while paying attention to Lord Torch Dragon. For him, if he used all his strength, he could instantly kill the Genesis god mecha in front of him, but he didn't need to expose his full strength at this time. Besides, he knew that even if he used all his strength, he could only deal with 2 or 3. It was far from Lord Torch Dragon, who regarded the Genesis god mecha as a toy. In less than 10 minutes, the number of Genesis god mecha present was reduced to 2 or 3. The pilots inside had lost the will to fight, so they turned around and ran away. However, they were quickly destroyed by Lord Torch Dragon's pursuit. Attack the city! Lord Torch Dragon roared at the sky and took the lead to swim into the city. Crimson Moon and the others followed closely behind. A large number of military Athena mecha, Dragon Knight mecha and so on rushed out of the city, but in front of Lord Torch Dragon, their formation was directly broken and they were vulnerable. That night, the border city of the Federation was declared lost, and the Empire army entered on a large scale. The next day, under the leadership of Lord Torch Dragon and a group of kings, the Empire army occupied one big city after another. The Federation citizens inside were controlled by the invading Empire army. The ordinary civilians all disarmed and surrendered, and the Empire army took over the city defense. On the third day, the headquarters of the Milan Consortium, one of the 4 major consortiums, was destroyed by Lord Torch Dragon and surrendered. On the fourth day, the Terrace Consortium, the only one of the 4 major consortiums that was struggling to survive, was completely destroyed by Lord Torch Dragon and Crimson Moon and other kings. Blood flowed like a river in Premier City. The lake island in the city, where the Terrace Consortium's headquarters was once worth tens of billions, was razed to the ground. Countless scenic villas designed by famous teachers were destroyed. Only corpses were scattered all over the ground. The entire land was extremely desolate. On the 5th day, Lord Torch Dragon, Crimson Moon and the others, accompanied by the top leaders of the military and business circles led by the 3 major consortiums that surrendered, held a meeting to announce the occupation to all the citizens of the Federation. As for the reform and new name, Lord Torch Dragon did not do it. He would do it slowly in the future. After occupying the Federation, he completely cut off the resources of the host city and froze all the nuclear weapons of the other nearby cities. Chapter 1181. So they want to cut off Lin Chongqing's escape route. Dean saw Candle Dragon Lord and the others appear on the battlefield. No wonder they didn't counterattack immediately. They want to cut off Lin Chongqing's escape route and force him into a desperate situation. Although Lin Chongqing could freely traverse the virtual world, The mainframe was his foundation. In the virtual world, Lin Chongqing was the master, but many devices still needed humans to activate them. Many of the machines that could move autonomously and were controlled by Lin Chongqing could also be manually shut down, cut off from power, and be permanently frozen. This was Lin Chongqing's fatal weakness. At this moment, he had nowhere to hide in front of Candle Dragon Lord and the Demon Emperor. In the next few days, Candle Dragon Lord led Crimson Moon and the others to occupy the Federation. When the chairman's meeting was held, Dean knew that they were going to start to move against Lin Chongqing, and Lin Chongqing was bound to call him again. This time, it will be the last bloody battle. Dean's eyes flashed coldly. After a few days of epiphany, he used Lin Chongqing's memory to research and develop abilities. His strength was several times stronger than before, and he had a new understanding of himself. The only regret was that he didn't have time to hone many powerful abilities to the extreme. If he was given a few years, he was confident that no matter how many traps Lin Chongqing buried in the host city, he would be able to destroy them all. If others were to give him advice and choose a smart choice, he would retreat temporarily and stay dormant for a few years before coming out. But when he thought of the lonely figure wandering in the wilderness, he felt a dull pain in his heart. He had lost her and forgotten her, so how could he let her go now? Even if his life was in danger this time, he didn't want to retreat. Although Lin Chongqing might be lying, but what if it was true? What if? They're coming. Dean suddenly noticed several dazzling heat sources approaching from the distant horizon. They didn't hide their heat sources. It should be Candle Dragon Lord and the others. This time, they might join forces with the Demon Emperor to attack. Dean frowned. Beep. The communicator suddenly lit up, and Lin Chongqing's virtual figure appeared. You should have been waiting for this moment, right? You've been reading the news on your wristwatch for the past few days, so you should know about their actions. They've already frozen all the nuclear weapons in the Federation, and they can't be activated. Even I can't do it. This time, they're preparing to completely destroy the mainframe. I need your help. Dudian knew that he was aware of his behavior in the past few days, but it was limited to the tour records in the Watt. There were no surveillance cameras around. Dudian didn't know that Dudian was developing a new ability. After all, they would have a battle sooner or later after solving the problem between the devil and the candle dragon. What do you want me to do? Dudian said indifferently. There was no change in his expression. Lin Chongqing smiled and said, We agreed last time. This time, you will help me hold back either the Demon Emperor or Master Candle Dragon. Leave the rest to me. Once it's done, I will definitely tell you what you want. I won't go back on my word. Dean was silent for a moment. How can you guarantee it? Lin Chongqing was startled. I guarantee with my reputation that I can give you a copy of my words. If I go back on my word, then you can spread it throughout the Federation. Dean's face became colder. Do you think this kind of thing can affect you? Lin Chongqing frowned, sighed, and said, It still affects me. After all, I'm the Federation's god of science and technology. If I do something that goes back on my word, even if I manage to defeat the Demon Emperor and the others, how am I going to establish myself in the Federation in the future? I don't know how to promise you since you don't believe me. After all, I don't have a body. My consciousness is in the virtual world. Nothing can threaten me except the mainframe. But I can't tell you about the mainframe. It's tantamount to suicide. Dean indifferently said, I don't need you to tell me about the mainframe. I know a little bit about it from the memory I plundered. If you break your promise, then I won't help you again. In addition, I need you to prepare a top mecha for me. I can fully display the performance of the mecha with my ability. Lin Chongqing smiled bitterly and said, I don't have any mecha here. They have already built up this place and can't transport anything here. If they weren't in a hurry to destroy me, they would only need to hold on for a few more years. When the energy here is exhausted, I will naturally die without fighting. Dean saw that he couldn't extort any benefits, so he was too lazy to talk with him. Okay, I will go. Then he crushed the watch. Even now, he's still testing me. It seems like he really doesn't know what's in the memories that I've devoured. There might be a big secret of his, but it's a pity that it's not in the memories. Dean tore off the watch and threw it to the side. He was ready to help Lin Chongqing after the Demon Emperor and the others attacked. He didn't believe that Lin Chongqing wouldn't be able to hold on for a few minutes. It's better to restrain the Candle Dragon Lord. The Demon Emperor alone reigns supreme over the Empire, so he should be stronger than the Candle Dragon Lord. It's better to leave the difficult bone to him. I don't know what he plans to do. Is he going to rely on that undead? Dean stood in the same place and fell into deep thought. He felt that Lin Chongqing was hiding something. He knows that the hatred between us can't be resolved. My killing intent towards him isn't inferior to that of the Demon Emperor. I'll help him this time. If he breaks the contract, then I can join forces with the Demon Emperor and the others to force him to abdicate. So, he will either fulfill the agreement and tell me the way to deal with the undead, or he has other preparations that can break the alliance between me and the Demon Emperor. However, the possibility of the second is very low. He can't deal with the Demon Emperor and the others alone. If he can deal with them, he won't need to beg me now. Thinking about it, the possibility of him knowing the way to deal with the undead is quite high. Calculating this point, Dean's heart slightly heated up, and his eyes brightened up a bit. At this time, Dean saw the blazing heat sources disappear on the ground in the distance. He stayed for half a minute before quickly approaching. He observed from a distance and saw that there were no signs of human habitation on the land of the underground base. He suddenly smelled 10 different body odors in the air, one of which he was very familiar with. His pupils narrowed, and a strong killing intent flashed through his eyes. Crimson Moon. Dean remembered her body odor. When he fell into her hands, it was better to die than to live. Her body odor was still fresh in his memory. His nose was more sensitive than a hound. He wouldn't forget anything he smelled, let alone Crimson Moon, who left a deep impression on him. It seems that they are all here. There were only 3 heat sources I saw before. The others should have habitually hidden their body heat sources but didn't eliminate their body odor. Dudian thought. Hiding the source of heat was a veteran hunter's habitual instinct. It could make the enemy unable to distinguish their specific strength. As for the smell, it was not necessary for Crimson Moon and the others to eliminate it here. In any case, Lin Chongqing knew their whereabouts from the moment they entered the city. Since Crimson Moon is here, the Demon Emperor must also be here. They really join forces. Dean looked at the ground under his feet. Suddenly, he felt a slight tremor. He immediately bent down to listen. Although the material of the underground base was extraordinary, there was still a faint sound coming out. He heard the sound of fierce fighting and impact. It seemed that something had hit the dome, and the soil on the ground was shaking slightly. Dean stood up. His eyes flashed. He felt that it was a pity. If his X-ray vision could penetrate the material of the underground base and see the situation inside, he would be able to accurately find the time to enter. Chapter 1182. On the second floor of the underground base, a virtual projection was projected on the ground. Lin Chongqing was standing in front of the Demon Emperor and Candle Dragon Lord with a smile on his face. He only had eyes for the Demon Emperor and Candle Dragon Lord. As for the other kings behind them, they were like air to him. There was not the slightest hint of tension on him, and he was still talking and laughing with a smile on his face. His voice was also very gentle as he said, "Demon Emperor, Candle Dragon Master, now that the hundreds of millions of people in the Federation have fallen into your hands, you have already gotten what you deserve. Do you really want to continue fighting with me?" Candle Dragon Lord originally wanted to attack the Federation's mainframe behind Lin Chongqing. Seeing that Lin Chongqing had appeared and said this, he couldn't help but sneer. What's the use of humans? If we really want to create humans, do we still need people like you? The most worthless thing in this world is humans. We need to eliminate the roots when we cut the grass. We don't want to fight with you, but we also don't want to keep you alive to take revenge on us in the future. Lin Chongqing smiled. You cut off my energy and turned this city into a dead city. After a few years, what can I use to fight with you? But now, it's still a little difficult for you to completely destroy me. Even if I can't drag you to death with me, I can at least make you suffer a lot. And the people behind you probably won't be able to leave this place alive. Hearing this, the Snake King and the other two kings behind the Demon Emperor and Candle Dragon Lord changed their expressions slightly. A trace of fear flashed in their eyes as they looked around vigilantly. Fei Yu, on the other hand, looked indifferent, and the corner of her mouth slightly curled up into a disdainful smile. The Light King, who was beside her, smiled as if he didn't hear the threat in her words. He maintained the same posture and expression from beginning to end. The Demon Emperor said indifferently, "This meeting is a moment that will be recorded in the history books. It seems that the three of us have never really met before. Unfortunately, meeting is also the time to part. You are the first-generation divine fetus from more than 200 years ago and have lived in the virtual world for more than 200 years. What you have seen and heard is far from what we can compare. Even if we live for another 1,000 years, what we have experienced may not be as much as what you have seen in 1 year. In other words, you have reached the level of God. You only lack a perfect divine body. When you find a perfect divine body, perhaps no one in this world will be your opponent. I don't think we want to see this result, so don't make things difficult for us." Lin Chongqing's eyebrows twitched a few times as he thought of Dean's figure. He gritted his teeth in hatred. Not only did he hate Dean's tricks, which made him underestimate the enemy, but he also hated the fact that Dean had promised to help him. However, Dean hadn't appeared yet. Lin Chongqing could guess that Dean wanted him to suffer more. What a vengeful brat! Although he was angry, his expression did not change at all. With a smile on his face, he said calmly, "In my opinion, the two of you are worrying too much. The two of you should know very well how rare a godly fetus is. It is not that easy to get one. Moreover, the methods to cultivate a godly fetus are all in the hands of those old things. We are just test subjects." Master Candle Dragon slightly raised his head and sneered. "What if those old things create new test subjects and you obtain them? They don't live on Earth for long and are far away from us. They don't know the situation here as well as you and I. If they knew, do you think you can still live in this virtual world?" Hearing his words, the kings behind him looked at each other in astonishment. They felt as if they had come into contact with a big secret, as if a corner of the world had been opened to them. Godly fetus? God? When Fei Yu heard these words, her eyes slightly narrowed. There was a trace of hidden greed in her eyes as she looked at Lin Chongqing. She didn't notice that the eyes of the Light King, who was next to her, also flickered a few times when he heard these words. Just as Lin Chongqing was about to reply to Master Candle Dragon, the Demon Emperor suddenly said coldly, "It is useless to say more. If you have any backup plans, take them all out. I believe you have been preparing for today's battle. With your calculation ability, you should have simulated all the situations of today's battle. No matter what kind of accident might occur, you might have calculated it. I wonder if you have calculated how to deal with it?" Lin Chongqing frowned slightly. Just as he was about to speak again, the Demon Emperor suddenly raised his hand and threw out a black light beam. It was unclear how the black light was released, but it was like an energy ball that directly penetrated the chest of Lin Chongqing's projection and smashed into a huge demon that was entrenched on the ground behind him. This was a demon covered in tentacles that looked like sarcomas. It was the demon body of one of the kings that had been left here earlier. When the dark energy ball hit the demon body, there was no sound. Like melting ice, it pierced a hole through the demon body. "Go!" Master Candle Dragon was too lazy to talk with Lin Chongqing as he saw that the Demon Emperor had already made a move. He led the kings to rush forward. Lin Chongqing's face slightly changed. He was angry in his heart. He wanted to use words to delay the time. He knew that Dean couldn't see the situation inside the base. Maybe he would come down after a while, but he didn't expect to fight. Damn, is he really not coming? Lin Chongqing couldn't help but look at the ground above his head. There was no surveillance near the base. He couldn't see the situation outside the base because of the nuclear bomb. Unless Dean's body was integrated into the base, he wouldn't be able to sense it. Roar. The undead that was standing proudly in front of the mainframe roared and led several corpses to rush forward to meet Master Candle Dragon, the Demon Emperor and the others. Lin Chongqing stood in the middle of the battlefield and watched them fight fiercely. Occasionally, his virtual projection would bump into him. He looked like a person who was standing in the middle of the battlefield and had nothing to do. Damn! Lin Chongqing's face turned ugly as he saw the undead being restrained by Master Candle Dragon and a young female king. Although the strength of the other kings' demonic bodies had become incomparably violent after turning into corpses, they had lost their rationality and weren't flexible enough to fight. Moreover, the Demon Emperor was leading the Light King and the other kings. Soon, two kings' demonic bodies were torn to pieces. They were completely unable to move. Go and destroy the mainframe. The Demon Emperor's body still maintained the appearance of a human, but his body was surging with dark energy. It was as if a special energy was attached to the skin of his hands and feet. The punches and kicks caused terrifying damage to the king's demonic bodies. The Demon Emperor called the Light King after repelling the king's demonic body. He told the Light King to attack the mainframe in front of him. The Light King's eyes slightly changed, but he didn't hesitate. He nodded and rushed over. Chapter 1183. Bang! The seemingly seamless metal wall behind the mainframe suddenly opened up. It was pitch black inside, but suddenly a ray of light appeared. The light was so dark that it was even deeper than the darkness in the cave. The moment the metal wall opened up, it rushed out and went straight towards the Light King who was attacking the mainframe. The Radiant King's pupils shrank as he instinctively felt an indescribable dangerous aura. He was horrified and hurriedly retreated, but that black shadow closed in the blink of an eye. It was even faster than the Radiant King, who was known for his speed, like a black lightning. With a bang, the Radiant King's retreating body flew back at an even faster speed. Fresh blood sprayed into the air, and with a bang, he crashed into the metal wall on the other side of a few thousand meters away, causing the entire underground base to tremble. The Candle Dragon Master, who was restraining the horrifying zombie, also noticed this. His expression changed slightly. Although he expected Lin Chongqing to have something up his sleeves, he did not expect it to be true, and it was so powerful. The Demon Lord did not look at the Light King who was sent flying. Instead, he squinted his eyes and looked at the black shadow. It looked like a human, but it was not a human. Its lower body was like a spider with 7 to 8 strange legs. On its back were 2 pairs of black scythe-like wings. There was a blood-red eye on its forehead that was filled with a violent aura. The pores on its body were filled with a murderous and bloody aura. It was like a demon that crawled out from the sea of blood. Aragami! A chill flashed in the Demon Lord's eyes as the dark energy around him fluctuated. Aragami? The Candle Dragon Master on the other side frowned. He felt that something was wrong. This thing did not seem to be a pure Aragami. There was an indescribable evil aura around it. Can the two of you have a good talk now? The projection of Lin Chongqing, who was in the middle of the battlefield, spoke. He pretended to sigh and said, "Although you have frozen the nuclear weapon to prevent me from dying with you, but with it here, if the two of you really want to fight to the end, I can at least drag one of you down with me. Do you believe me?" The Candle Dragon Master forced the horrifying zombie to retreat. The zombie seemed to have received an order and did not pursue him. This is your trump card? A modified origami? As he spoke, the Candle Dragon Master glanced at the Demon Lord, who was not far away. The Demon Emperor said indifferently, "A corpse isn't qualified to negotiate." With that said, he attacked again. Lin Chongqing's expression changed. He had wanted to use this opportunity to stall for time, but he didn't expect that the Demon Emperor would notice something or have other thoughts. He would interrupt his plans every time, as if he had steeled his heart to kill him. Anger rose in his heart. With a cold snort, he quickly passed down the order. Roar! The demon-like origami let out a roar as its 3 eyes turned red. It took the initiative to charge towards the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor snorted coldly. The clothes on his back suddenly split open, and a large number of sinister arms stretched out. It was as if his back was an azura hell, and countless evil spirits were crawling out from it. As soon as these arms stretched out, they grabbed at the origami. Each of the arms was covered in a special dark energy. The arms were extremely long, and as soon as they touched the origami, the flesh and blood of the origami were corroded. The origami roared towards the sky. Suddenly, its body softened like mucus. Then, countless sharp blades extended out from the mucus and shot towards the Demon Emperor. Some of the mucus was used as a shield to block the countless arms from the Demon Emperor's back. In addition, some of the mucus was used as a nozzle to shoot poisonous bullets at the Demon Emperor's arms and thighs, corroding them like acid. The Demon Emperor let out a low roar. Its body also turned into a puddle of black mucus. From the mucus, swords, claws, shields, axes, and other objects were formed. The Demon Emperor was locked in a stalemate with the mucus transformed from the origami. Behind the Demon Emperor, Fei Yu's eyes flickered when she saw this scene. The other kings might have a hard time understanding this strange battle, but she knew that this was a battle of life and death. There was no specific form, no specific means, everything could be created at will, and the body could be transformed. This kind of battle had broken the conventional limits of human thinking. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a battle of gods. This was the level of life that she had dreamed of, and it was also the level of life that she had reached. However, after reaching this level, she realized that there were differences between humans and gods. On the other side, Master Candle Dragon, who was holding back the horrifying zombies, was observing the battle between the Demon Emperor and the origami. However, he was not in a hurry to help the Demon Emperor. This was a rare opportunity to understand the details of the Demon Emperor. After Lin Chongqing was dealt with, it would be the war between the Fire Dragon Country and the Empire. At that time, it would be even more tragic. There could only be one king in this world. Because there was only one king, and that was why he was respected. The speed of life reconstruction is too fast, a little faster than me. Master Candle Dragon became more and more serious as he watched. At his level, he knew how difficult it was to continue to improve his combat power. Abilities and demonic insects were no longer important to them. What was important was the control of their own bodies. At this moment, when the Demon Emperor's body was formed into various kinds of sharp blades or axes, the speed was extremely fast and almost instantaneously. In this kind of battle, even if one was faster by only 1,000th of a second, he would still be able to attack first and win. Suddenly, Master Candle Dragon noticed that when the origami reconstructed its limbs, its speed was even faster than the Demon Emperor's. After dozens of sharp blades shot out from the mucus, when the Demon Emperor turned into a sword and shield to parry, the sharp blades suddenly split into spikes and transformed into a mace-like weapon. It violently smashed onto the sword and shield, shattering the sword and shield that were the perfect counter to the sharp swords. This caused the Demon Emperor to have to reconstruct new armor to deal with it, and for a moment, he felt that it was difficult to parry. How is this possible? Is this a living origami? Master Candle Dragon widened his eyes in disbelief. While he was still in shock, the horrifying zombie beside him seized the opportunity and bit on his shoulder, tearing off a piece of flesh. When he came back to his senses, his shoulder quickly burned into flames. All the cells were turned into fat, burning together with the virus that invaded his body. The virus infection of the latter had no effect on him. Unless he wanted to die, it was almost impossible for him to be infected. If it were other kings, it would not be so easy to deal with this horrifying zombie. Even if they could cut off their limbs, shed their skin, and shed their shells, it would still take time. Moreover, they could not cut off their limbs, shed their skin, and shed their shells endlessly. We can't drag this any longer. Go and destroy the host. Seeing that the demon emperor was at a disadvantage, Master Candle Dragon did not want to drag this any longer. Otherwise, he would have to expose his trump card, so he immediately said to Fei Yu, who was beside him. Fei Yu slightly pouted and said, "I'm not going." "You?" Master Candle Dragon's eyes widened in anger. He did not expect that a king would dare to disobey him. Fei Yu was not afraid at all. She left without a care and turned to help the injured Radiant King attack the other King Devil body, leaving this horrifying zombie to Master Candle Dragon alone. Master Candle Dragon was so angry that he almost went berserk. However, he managed to control his anger in the end. He had thought that this new king trained by the Demon Emperor was obedient, but he did not expect that he would make such a move at this critical moment. Unfortunately, he could not get away to pursue this matter. Otherwise, his alliance with the Demon Emperor would definitely be torn apart, and the one to benefit would be Lin Chongsheng. At this moment, another aura appeared above everyone's head. The Demon Emperor, Master Candle Dragon, and the other kings were all shocked. Could it be that Lin Chongsheng still had a terrifying trump card? But soon, Master Candle Dragon felt that this aura was very familiar. He immediately remembered that it was the Federation King from last time. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. A mere king would not be able to affect the overall situation. Fei Yu released her senses and suddenly felt that this aura was a little familiar. Soon, she suddenly remembered the identity of the newcomer. She was startled for a moment, but her eyes immediately lit up. She immediately abandoned the King Devil body in front of her and rushed to the first floor of the underground base. "Where are you going?" Radiant King hurriedly shouted. Chapter 1184. As soon as Dean entered the first floor of the underground base, he felt several powerful auras emitting from the second floor of the base from the hole in the ground in front of him. His perception quickly spread along the hole. Before he had time to see the specific situation of the second floor, he felt a familiar aura rushing toward the hole. It seemed to go straight to the first floor of the base. Crimson Moon? Dean was startled, and his eyes instantly turned cold. Whoosh! A beautiful figure floated out of the hole and landed gracefully on the ground. It was Crimson Moon. She didn't release her demonic form at the moment, but she looked beautiful and moving. However, compared to when Dean first met her, she lacked the tenderness of a young girl and had more of a cold and elegant domineering aura. "You are still alive." Crimson Moon looked up and down at Dean, and her eyes were full of surprise. She knew that Dean was seriously injured. She thought he was a failure and abandoned by her. She didn't expect him to be secretly taken away by Dean's accomplices. When she reacted, he had already left the giant wall of Sylvia. Although she was a little angry, she didn't bother to chase him because she knew that this man wouldn't live long without a heart. But now, Dean was standing in front of her, and the aura and energy field he exuded were not inferior to other kings she had met. In addition, when they came here, Candle Dragon Lord told them that Lin Chongsheng had also cultivated a more difficult king. She didn't expect that this person was Dean. "Your experiment seems to be successful." Dean looked at her coldly and suddenly sneered. "Unfortunately, you have struggled for so long, but you still returned to the Demon Emperor and became his dog." Crimson Moon frowned slightly, but soon stretched out and said, I didn't expect you to secretly run to this foreign country. What method did Lin Chongqing use to let you live until now? Do you think I will tell you? Dean sneered. Crimson Moon's eyes flashed. Suddenly, her arms shook and turned into two curved blades, rushing toward Dean. Since you don't want to tell me, then go to hell. Dean didn't expect her to suddenly attack, but he was already prepared for it. The blood all over his body surged, and his arms also turned into two splitting blades, meeting Crimson Moon head-on. With a bang, the four blades crossed each other, and Crimson Moon's two machete arms were immediately cut, but they didn't break. Even so, Crimson Moon was shocked, and she quickly pulled away. Dean immediately took advantage of the victory to chase. Several sharp blades shot out from his chest and shoulders, chasing after Crimson Moon like a venomous snake. A trace of anger flashed across Crimson Moon's face. Suddenly, a large amount of black mist erupted from her pores and enveloped her whole body. The black mist spread in all directions and formed a dark domain. Dean's line of sight also instantly lost sight of Crimson Moon. Several sharp blades pierced through, but they hit nothing but air. Dean's eyes flashed, and he immediately switched to the ability of the Sun Beast. Suddenly, he saw Crimson Moon. After so long, I didn't expect you to have improved to this level. Suddenly, Crimson Moon's voice floated from behind Dean like a ghost. Dean didn't look back. He could see 360 degrees without any blind spot. Behind him was still the black mist, and he couldn't see Crimson Moon's figure. It seemed that the darkness was her body. However, it's impossible to kill me with this little strength. Crimson Moon's voice was very leisurely, as if she was not in a hurry to fight. She suddenly said, I'll give you a chance. Do you want to cooperate with me? Cooperate? Dean was startled. He quickly restrained his thoughts and looked around vigilantly, so as not to be distracted. Don't worry, you're already in my dark realm. It's easy for me to kill you. I'm not deliberately disturbing your mind. Crimson Moon seemed to see through Dean's thoughts and sneered softly. Dean's eyes were deep, but he didn't comment. He suddenly thought of Crimson Moon's words. She only had the whole world in her heart, and her goal was to become a god and rule all life. However, she was now subservient to the demon emperor. Most likely, she was unwilling. At this moment, she wanted to talk to him about cooperation. Presumably, she had ulterior motives and wanted to take advantage of the chaos to rebel? If that was the case, there was indeed a bit of a possibility. How do we cooperate? Dean asked. Crimson Moon let out a light laugh and said, Do you know who is ruling this world? Dean said in his heart, the Empire's demon emperor, the Federation's immortal Lin, and the two dragon lords of the Fire Dragon country. As far as I know, it's the four of them who divided the surviving humans. Suddenly, Crimson Moon's figure appeared more than 10 meters in front of Dean. Her skin was abnormally snow-white and seemed to emit light in the darkness. Even the lustrous pores on her body could be seen clearly. There was a slightly arrogant smile on her face. She said, You're half right. The human countries are indeed controlled by the four of them. As for the snow apes and the endless sea monsters in the north, they're just scattered sand, nothing to worry about. Dean's heart slightly moved. He had heard about the snow apes in the north. It seemed to be a country formed by the undeads who had given birth to consciousness, and the endless sea monsters should be the most powerful force on Earth. However, the area of the ocean was too large. The sea monsters lived in the ocean and fought with each other. They simply didn't care about the creatures on land. Just like how they fought for the throne on land, they didn't care about the monsters in the ocean. The four of them, in the end, are just spokespersons. Crimson Moon slowly opened her mouth, but her words were shocking, causing Dean to hold his breath. You're from the old era. You've personally experienced the Doomsday disaster. You should also know what the root cause of the disaster is. Crimson Moon said with a faint smile, although humans finally launched the nuclear annihilation plan, the demonic insects weren't completely wiped out. Moreover, the demonic insect's infiltration into humans at that time was much deeper than you think. As early as the nuclear annihilation plan was launched, they already knew in advance. However, they didn't achieve their goal. They were greedy and hesitant. They didn't evacuate in time, leading to the destruction of most of the demonic insect. However, the great sages among the demonic insects left Earth with the surviving demonic insect. Great sages? Dean was startled. Crimson Moon said with a smile, "They're equivalent to the leaders of the demonic insects, the wise ones who led the demonic insects to survive." "How do you know? Otherwise, do you think I didn't do anything when I became the king?" Crimson Moon asked. Dean understood and no longer questioned. However, the remaining demonic insects on Earth didn't completely die out. Some demonic insects passed on the situation on Earth, which was received by the great sages who escaped from Earth. Therefore, they once again returned to Earth. Chapter 1185. Dean frowned slightly, but he was not too surprised. Burrow had told him about the secrets of the kings a long time ago. Last time when he helped Lin Chongqing to defeat the kings, he also saw the demonic insects that came out of their bodies. These demonic insects parasitized in the brains of the kings and interfered with their thoughts. However, the main thinking of the kings was still their own consciousness, which also caused the kings to fight against each other. He thought that the ability of the demonic insects was limited, but he did not expect that the demonic insects were still controlling the kings. "You just mentioned the Troll Federation and the Fire Dragon Country, but you did not mention the Empire. Did you omit them?" Dean looked at her. Crimson Moon smiled and said, "The Empire is different from the Federation and the Fire Dragon Country. As you can see, the Empire has a natural giant wall. It seems to be artificially made, but it is a coincidence. This is not the technology of the demonic insects, nor is it the technology of humans, but the technology of the origami." Dean was shocked, and his eyes suddenly became clear. The Empire is controlled by the origami? So every giant wall is guarded by the remains of the origami? Rather than guarding, it is better to say that it is a memorial. Crimson Moon smiled faintly and said, "Every giant wall is a graveyard for the origami, but it is also a prison for the experimental subjects. Otherwise, with the demon insects' fear and hatred towards the origami, why would they keep their corpses and turn them into our human religion?" Dean's face changed slightly. The experimental subject she mentioned was obviously referring to human beings. He suddenly thought of the technology that was blocked in the giant wall of Sylvia. In other giant walls, the technology was not high. After 300 years of development, even if there was no complete inheritance of the old technology, humans would not still be in the ignorant medieval era. The Empire blocked the technology of the giant wall. He knew it when he ascended to the position of the Wall Lord, but he did not know the purpose. It was obvious that the border needed to be defended against strong enemies, but the development of technology in their territory was restricted. In his opinion, it was very contradictory. Now he finally got the answer. Humans were the experimental subjects, no wonder humans were not allowed to master technology. Wait, you said that the Empire is controlled by the origami, so doesn't it mean that the Demon Emperor listens to the origami? The Federation and the Fire Dragon Country should know about this. Is your alliance a conspiracy, and the real target is the Demon Emperor? Dean's hair stood up as he thought of this. Was this a trap for the Devil Emperor? Crimson Moon saw the surprised look on Dean's face and giggled. "You are so cute. What kind of person is the Devil Emperor? How could he not know each other's identity? Even I know about this, so how could I hide it from him? I haven't told you yet. There are wars between the devil insect. For example, the flame soul insects you saw were split from the supreme flame devil insect." Dodian was startled. "There is a war between the insects." Demonic insects are our unified name for them. Actually, demonic insects are divided into two species, frigid demonic insects and flaming demonic insects. One is hot while the other is cold. With opposite natures, they are natural enemies and hate each other. The war between them is even longer than the history of thousands of years among Hua people. Crimson Moon's lips curled into a smile as she slowly explained. The environment of the planet where the demon insects live is extremely harsh, and the demon insects are all born in natural demon dens. The planet's environment is extremely extreme, with half of the planet being hot and cold, causing the physiques of the two species of demon insects to evolve further and further away from each other, causing the hatred between them to grow deeper and deeper. However, it is because of the extremes that they have reached the pinnacle. The faint ridicule in Crimson Moon's eyes slowly disappeared, and she said, "You have obtained the ice worm, so you should be able to see how tenacious its vitality is. Even in an oxygen-free and lightless environment, it can survive and reproduce. It is simply a super virus." In addition to their strong survival ability, the lifespan of the demon insects is also beyond your imagination. Ordinary demon insects can live for more than 1,000 years, and the stronger ones can even live for 3,000 years. And the great sages of the demon insects are all existences of this level. You can imagine what kind of terrifying intelligence and combat power a life that has lived for 3,000 years can evolve into. Dean was stunned. Although he felt that his ability to accept was very strong, he was still shocked by Crimson Moon's words. Live for more than 1,000 years? That was more than 10 times the lifespan of a human. However, when he thought about some of the long-lived creatures on Earth, he quickly felt relieved. Not to mention the almost immortal lighthouse jellyfish, even small creatures like turtles and sea toads could live for hundreds of years. With the ability and special characteristics of the ice worm, it was not surprising for them to live for thousands of years. Their physique was extremely cold, and they aged slowly. Even if Crimson Moon said that they could freeze themselves into ice and survive for thousands of years, he would still believe it. Although the demon insects have a long lifespan, very few of them can live to the point where they die of old age. Crimson Moon said, "The environment of the demon insect planet is very harsh. Even if most of the demon insects do not fight with the hostile demon insects, they will be strangled by the environment or hunted by the origami. Therefore, they will travel across the stars, looking for a new suitable place to live, and then they found our Earth." Dean was stunned for a moment and he asked, "Hunted by the origami? Could it be that the origami also live on their planet?" "Of course not," Crimson Moon said. "To the origami, the demon insects are just their food, and the planet that the origami live on is not far from the demon insect planet. The demon insects are like the poultry that the origami raise." Poultry? Dean was a little shocked. He did not expect the relationship between the demon insects and the origami to be like this. No wonder the demon insects are afraid of the origami. The origami are all gluttons, like a bottomless pit. They will devour all the resources around them, including stones, weeds, and water. Crimson Moon said slowly, "Therefore, the origami planet is very barren. Almost the entire planet has been devoured. However, the origami are even more terrifying than the demon insects. They can use their bodies to travel in the vacuum of the universe. Countless rays and the absolute zero temperature in the universe cannot kill them." Dean was startled. He felt like he was listening to a fairy tale. Crimson Moon saw that Dean did not seem to believe her. She chuckled and said, "Don't think that it is very difficult. When you reach the strength of the Demon Emperor, you will be able to do it too. For example, the Arctic demon insects and the flaming demon insects can survive in the universe for a short period of time. They can build a life reactor inside their body, so that they will not be completely frozen, and stop thinking." Dean could not help but frown when he saw her relaxed face. He asked, "These things, where do you know these things? Do all the kings know these things? Did you forget my ability?" Crimson Moon looked at him with a teasing smile. "Do you want to recall it again?" Dean snorted and said, "Your words are full of loopholes, since the origami controls the Empire, with the origami suppressing the demon insects, how can they allow the Federation and the Fire Dragon Country to exist? You said that the Federation and the Fire Dragon Country are controlled by the demon insects, then the Fire Dragon Country is naturally controlled by the flaming demon insects, and the Federation is controlled by the Arctic demon insects. Then why is the Federation forbidden to use the demon insects to modify the body? Why did they choose to use the human technology? Crimson Moon said indifferently, "What I said is true, maybe there is something you can't understand, but there may be other secrets. In any case, I did not lie to you. The reason why I told you this is to let you know my sincerity. If you want to cooperate with me, after the matter is done, I will tell you about the virus. Don't you want to know the root of this virus?" Dean's pupils slightly shrank, but soon returned to normal. His heart was slightly shaken. The root of the virus? If he knew the root of the virus, did it mean that there was hope to find a way to crack it? If he could crack it, could he cure her? Seeing that Dean seemed to be moved, Crimson Moon smiled lightly and said, "Now that the situation is in a stalemate, in my opinion, that old boy Lin Chongqing has already played all his cards. The only last resort may be to explode the host, in a futile attempt to perish together with us, but he will not use this step unless he is desperate. I hope you can help me get the host." Dean's eyes moved. He said, "What do you want the host for? To control the Federation?" "You don't need to worry about this," Crimson Moon said indifferently. Chapter 1186. What do you want to do? Dean asked. Delta. Crimson Moon thought that he agreed and said, "We will pretend to fight fiercely and look for opportunities. If Lin Chongqing is no match for Candle Dragon Lord and the Demon Emperor, we will help him. If he can block the two of them, we will continue to watch. When necessary, we can help Lin Chongqing kill Candle Dragon Lord or the Demon Emperor. No matter who dies, the remaining people will have to cooperate with us if they want to get Lin Chongqing. In this way, the initiative is in our hands." "Your target is Candle Dragon Lord and the Demon Emperor?" Dean deliberately asked. "Don't you want to deal with Lin Chongqing?" "I want to get the host. Their target is also the host. If we directly kill Lin Chongqing, how can we compete with the Demon Emperor and Candle Dragon Lord for the host?" Crimson Moon said angrily. Dean nodded slightly. In his heart, he had some understanding of Crimson Moon's thoughts. She wanted to get rid of one of the Demon Emperor and Candle Dragon Lord, and then use the other to deal with Lin Chongqing. When Lin Chongqing was killed and the host became ownerless, she would deal with the remaining one. If this was Crimson Moon's plan, it at least showed that she had the confidence to fight the Demon Emperor or Candle Dragon Lord alone. "I know, I will cooperate with you," Dean said. Crimson Moon smiled and said, "In that case, let's pretend. The outside is shrouded by my dark realm. Our previous conversation was not leaked, so they have no way to perceive it. However, it is easy to be suspicious after such a long time without any movement." After saying that, she took the initiative to wave her palm at Dean. Dean had long felt the extraordinariness of her dark domain. He immediately retreated when he saw that she didn't use her demonic body. He also didn't use his demonic body, but his whole body tensed up. He didn't dare to underestimate the enemy. He didn't know if she had seen that his physique was different from ordinary kings. She knew that it wouldn't be easy to kill him, so she said so many words to make him careless. Crimson Moon saw a trace of caution in Dean's eyes, and she secretly sighed in her heart. From the time she had read through Dean's memories, she knew that this man was as cautious as a cat, meticulous and suspicious, and this had not changed. S3. Soon, Crimson Moon's palm slapped toward Dean's forehead. Dean raised his hand to block. He felt a soft but strong thrust. His t-shirt flew backward and hit the metal wall on the first floor of the base. Dean clapped his hands and took the initiative to attack Crimson Moon. When he was in front of her, he suddenly retracted his attack and secretly defended himself. At the same time, he asked in a low voice, "Why do you have the dark domain? Is it your father's ability?" Fei Yu's expression changed slightly as she gritted her teeth and said, "This is my business. Don't pry too much into it. Are you Crimson Moon or Burrow?" Dean stared at her. "It has nothing to do with you," Crimson Moon shouted in a low voice. Her arm suddenly turned into a giant scythe and slashed at Dean. Dean's arm was instantly petrified, blocking the huge scythe. His arm was cut a few inches deep, and some stone chips were shaved off. He retreated and frowned. "Don't go too far." Fei Yu coldly snorted. Her scythe arm returned to its original shape. She asked, "How did you become Lin Chongqing's helper? Was your problem as a t-shirt solved by him?" "It has nothing to do with you." Dean also refused. Fei Yu's face sank, but she quickly returned to normal. She said indifferently, "If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Act well and don't let them see through you." "As you wish." Dean's shoulder burst out several sharp blades and stabbed toward Fei Yu. Fei Yu's eyes flashed. A large number of dark knights suddenly appeared from the surrounding fog. They raised their shields and blocked in front of the sharp blades. However, the black shields formed by the fog were like paper and were easily pierced by the sharp blades. She suddenly raised her hand and shot out a large number of white threads, forming a thread-like shield in front of her. When the sharp blades stabbed into the shield, he immediately felt a heavy sticky force. Dean's face changed slightly. He quickly retracted the sharp blades to prevent them from sinking too deeply. He had no choice but to break them to protect himself. "You've used the splitter's ability to the extreme." Fei Yu chuckled. Dean said indifferently, "You're not bad either." Although he said so, he was secretly awestruck in his heart. His splitting blade was invincible, and there were very few things that could withstand it, but Crimson Moon's white silk shield was able to block his blade. Once the blade pierced too deep, it would instead stick to the shield, making it difficult for her to free herself. If his splitting blade was the strongest and fiercest, then the white silk shield was the softest. "I can burn this white silk shield with Tai Wai Beast's ability," Dean said in his heart. Dudian thought in his heart. At the same time, his pupils turned dark gold. He used his X-ray vision to penetrate into the white silk shield, observing the structure of the white silk shield, as well as the internal structure of the spinneret connected to Crimson Moon's arm. The ability to spin silk to form a shield outside the body required higher control of the body. Long-term practice could help him better control the body. Again, seeing that Dean was no longer attacking, Fei Yu shouted and took the initiative to meet him. Dean also immediately met him. The two seemed to be learning from each other. Dean seized the opportunity to learn the many changes of her ability. On the second floor of the underground base, the projection Lin Chongqing looked up at the first floor above the hole. It was shrouded in black mist, and the battle inside could not be seen clearly. However, he could hear the voice of the J-hand from time to time. He had seen Fei use fighting style from other instruments and knew that Dean was surrounded by her ability. It would be difficult for him to escape for a while unless Dean could crack her ability and use the same ability to counterattack. S3. Useless thing. Lin Chongqing was angry. He thought that Dean could at least help him hold the attack of the J-King. Judging from Dean's last attack, he did have this ability. Moreover, he knew that Dean's growth was too amazing. If he was given time and fighting, he would definitely evolve quickly. However, he didn't expect to meet the newly rising first king of the Demon Emperor. He was immediately entangled and couldn't get out for a long time. He felt that Dean should be deliberately delaying and unwilling to use his full strength. But now, he had no other way to continue to stimulate Dean. He could only concentrate on another battlefield. Bang! The origami suddenly turned into a giant hammer and smashed the diamond-shaped shield that the Demon Emperor had hastily formed. The Demon Emperor was pushed back a few feet. Then, the origami suddenly split into two, with the same height and appearance as before. One of them rushed toward the other two kings who were trying to sneak up to the mainframe, while the other continued to rush toward the demon emperor, trying to contain him. Chapter 1187. While the demon overlord was dealing with one of the Aragami's clones, the other clones had already arrived in front of the two kings who had bypassed the battlefield and attempted to attack the mainframe. One of the two kings was a nine-tailed cat king, and the other was a snake king. When they saw the Aragami's clones charging at them, their expressions instantly changed. They looked at each other and quickly decided to join forces. They did not believe that the two kings could not deal with half of the Aragami's body. The two of them attacked together from the left and right, displaying their respective ability domains. At the moment when they exchanged blows, the two of them suddenly realized that they were wrong, and they were ridiculously wrong. They had no idea how terrifying the power of the demon overlord, who was on the same level as the Candle Dragon Master, was. The moment the Aragami's clones approached the two of them, their bodies suddenly split apart. From the brain to the chest, they completely split into two parts, each of which quickly demonized. The cells were like inflated balloons, rapidly splitting. Then, the two parts of the body turned into a nine-headed cat king and a nine-headed snake king. They pounced at the nine-tailed cat king and the snake king at the same time. The 9 snake heads spat out thick dark green poisonous gas, covering an area of hundreds of meters, forming a poisonous gas domain. The 9-headed cat, on the other hand, let out a strange overlapping sound. It was extremely ear-piercing, making one's head feel dizzy. The Snake King felt that his thoughts had paused for a moment. Then, he saw that the poisonous gas that he spat out was completely nullified by the poisonous gas that the 9 snake heads spat out. Then, the 9 snake heads pounced at him at high speed, wrapping around his body. The next moment, the 9 snake heads bit down at the same time. Fine and sharp teeth grew out of the snake heads. It was not only the 2 snake fangs, but also the sharp teeth of a beast. They bit through the scales on the Snake King's body and gnawed on the flesh inside. The Snake King let out a painful cry and quickly cut off the pain in his body. However, the pain from the bite was still transmitted to his brain through his nerve. The latter's bite seemed to have made his sense of pain extraordinarily sensitive, accompanied by neurotoxin. On the other side, Nine-Tailed Cat tried to pounce forward to help, but it was blocked by Nine-Headed Cat. Nine-Headed Cat bared its teeth, and there was an inexplicable threat to it. Nine-Tailed Cat King did not dare to act recklessly. The snake-bodied king's body quickly twisted, demonizing sharp claws. Like a flood dragon, it tried to grab the snakeheads, but they were pierced by the sharp blades that grew out of the snakehead's neck. In the blink of an eye, there were hundreds of snakeheads biting at the same time. Soon, the snake-bodied king's struggle gradually weakened. Suddenly, a wound opened up on its forehead, and a scarlet figure popped out. This scarlet figure was a half-meter-long naked worm. It jumped out from the gap between the hundreds of snake heads. After landing, it wanted to quickly escape, but the hundreds of snake heads suddenly rushed up and drowned it. By the time the snake's head retracted, the supreme flaming devil bug was nowhere to be seen. After eating the supreme flaming devil bug, the snake's head slowly turned into a bloody mouth. It was a mouth that did not look like a demon's, but it was extremely ferocious. It swallowed the Snake King's body that was full of bite marks and bones. After chewing a few times, the huge mouth retracted and returned to the human half of the Aragami's clone. The other half of the body was still a 9-headed cat. At this moment, it also retracted quickly and returned to the complete appearance of the Aragami's clone. The 9-tailed Cat King's eyes narrowed. It did not expect the Snake King to die so quickly. It could not fight back at all. Run. She turned around and ran. Her movements were swift, and in the blink of an eye, she had pulled away from the Aragami's clone. The Aragami's clone did not seem to have the intention to chase after her. Instead, it turned around and rushed toward the Candle Dragon Lord on the other side. At this moment, the Candle Dragon Lord was restraining the horrifying zombie. Although he still had some spare energy to observe the other battlefields, he could not free himself. Seeing that the nine-tailed Cat King and the Snake King were defeated by the Aragami's clone, he could not help but feel annoyed. At the same time, he turned his gaze to the Demon Lord. However, he saw that the Demon Lord still maintained his human appearance and was fighting fiercely with the other Aragami's clone. The Demon Lord was suppressing the other Aragami's clone, but it seemed that the winner could not be decided within a short period of time. Demon Lord, you can't even deal with half of the Aragami's body? Why do you need so long? The Candle Dragon Lord roared in anger as flames surged all over his body. A black vertical pupil appeared on the Demon Lord's forehead. His attacks suddenly became a few times fiercer, suppressing the Aragami's clone and forcing it to retreat. However, the Aragami's clone that had eaten the Snake King did not have the intention to go back to help. Instead, it went straight toward the Candle Dragon Lord. The Candle Dragon Lord pushed the horrifying zombie away and roared into the sky. His body was covered in flames, and the terrifying temperature instantly swept across the entire second floor of the underground base. Everyone felt like they were in a furnace. The surrounding metal walls became extremely hot, and their sweat evaporated instantly. The horrifying zombie that was closest to the Candle Dragon Lord had its hair completely burned, and its clothes were also burned to ashes. It was naked, but its face was expressionless, and its attacks were still fierce and fearless. After the Aragami's clone flew over, its body suddenly twisted and changed from a human to a dragon. However, it was different from the Candle Dragon Lord's fire dragon. It turned into an ice dragon that was covered in ice crystals, and it released a large amount of cold air that froze the ground. Under the cold and hot air, the surrounding metal walls faintly cracked, as if it was about to break. This scene fell into the eyes of the projection Lin Chongqing, and his expression changed slightly. He hurriedly tried to persuade the Candle Dragon Lord, but his words were automatically ignored by the Candle Dragon Lord. The ice dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws at the Candle Dragon Lord. It spat out cold air that froze the flames outside the Candle Dragon Lord's body. The Candle Dragon Lord was shocked and angry. He did not expect that the Aragami could burst out such a powerful energy with only half of its body. No wonder the Demon Emperor couldn't finish off the Aragami's clone after such a long time. Ice and fire mutually restrained each other. The strong fire could extinguish the water, and the strong water could extinguish the fire. Ultimately, the weaker one would be restrained. At this moment, the Candle Dragon Lord actually felt a trace of coldness. The raging flames outside his body were touched by the ice dragon's breath, and the fire was greatly reduced as if it was about to be extinguished. I don't believe that you can release Absolute Zero. The Candle Dragon Lord gritted his teeth slightly. Absolute Zero was the limit of the ice ability, and it was also a forbidden area. Because once one's ability was suppressed to the level of Absolute Zero, his body would also be frozen, and even his thoughts would stop. It was equivalent to a suicidal attack that would destroy everything. The Candle Dragon Lord's body kept secreting fat and dragon oil, and the temperature outside his body slowly rose. The scales and bones all over his body had crystallized, and there was a dancing flame inside, dispersing most of the surrounding cold air. He roared and pounced on the Aragami. At this time, the horrifying Walking Dead on the other side rushed over, hugged his dragon tail from behind, and pulled back vigorously. The Candle Dragon Lord roared and swung his dragon tail. However, this pause caused the Aragami to spit out 7 mouthfuls of extremely cold air, which almost extinguished the flames on his body, and the air was once again bitterly cold. Bastard! The Candle Dragon Lord was furious. He once again stimulated the heat in his body, but he saw the horrifying Walking Dead biting his dragon tail. He had to construct a layer of bone barrier inside the dragon tail to isolate the Walking Dead virus. "Let me help you." The calm voice of the Demon Emperor suddenly came from the other side. The Candle Dragon Lord was slightly startled. He turned his attention and saw the Demon Emperor flying over. On the ground behind him was the dying Aragami's clone. Its whole body was covered by dark energy and was constantly being eaten away. "You finally finished it. Hurry up and cut this thing for me." The Candle Dragon Lord was relieved and immediately swung his dragon tail in the direction of the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor's black hair fluttered in the wind, and his whole body was shrouded in dark energy. He rushed over quickly and suddenly raised his hand to slap the Candle Dragon Lord's tail. The dark energy turned into a dark blade and instantly pierced through the dragon tail. It sped all the way forward, followed the back of the dragon tail, and scratched the back of the Candle Dragon Lord. Blood splashed out from the declining flames, sprinkling all over the ground. The Candle Dragon Lord was shocked and turned to look at the Demon Emperor. When he saw the Demon Emperor's cold and murderous eyes, he immediately came to a realization. His eyes suddenly turned red and he roared, "How dare you betray our covenant? I want you to die." Chapter 1188. There is only one true God in this world, and that is me. The Demon Emperor's face was cold and callous. The dark energy all over his body suddenly turned into thousands of black snakes, wrapping around the Candle Dragon Master's body and tearing at his body. The indestructible fiery crystal-like scales were ruthlessly torn off, dripping with blood. Candle Dragon Lord was enraged. He roared at the sky, and the blood flowing all over his body suddenly burned, turning into a raging fire like gasoline, burning the thousands of black snakes until they twisted. Then, they turned into dark energy again and returned to the Demon Lord's side, forcing him to retreat. "Ephinius, you will die a horrible death." The Candle Dragon Master roared with a murderous aura, "Even if I die today, I will drag you down with me. Don't even think about getting him for yourself. When you die, the Qilin Master will flatten your empire and destroy the foundation of the Aragami on Earth." The Demon Lord was shrouded in black mist, and his pale face was faintly discernible. His expression was extremely cold. "Lord Qilin? How do you know that I'm not doing this because of him?" Candle Dragon Lord roared angrily, "What did you say?" "A long time ago, I had a deal with him, but I never found a suitable opportunity to return the favor. This time we can work together to complete that deal. Have you ever thought about why you sent you instead of him after your discussion?" The Demon Lord said indifferently. The flames all over Candle Dragon Lord's body swayed violently, as if they were about to turn into a raging sea of fire, and also as if they were about to be extinguished at any time. The Demon Lord's words were like the evening drum and morning bell, hitting his heart hard. When he was discussing this matter with Lord Qilin, he had a strange feeling in his heart, but he did not think too much about it. He did not expect things to develop in the worst direction. "Impossible, impossible!" Candle Dragon Lord felt that his heart was bleeding, and he roared in pain, "Lord Qilin is my brother, my biological brother. Why would he harm me? If it weren't for him, I would have died countless times. If he wants me dead, he only needs to say it. He only needs to say it himself. Why would he need an outsider to do it? I don't believe it. He must have some other reason. Don't even think about messing with my mind." At the end of his sentence, Lord Torch Dragon let out a fierce roar. He ignored the Arctic Dragon and turned around to charge at the Demon Emperor. The flames on his body suddenly swept out for hundreds of meters, burning the metal walls until they were red hot. He opened his mouth and spat out a magma-like pillar of fire, shrouding the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor's expression changed, and he roared, "Lin Chongqing, why aren't you helping me? I'm about to be injured. Just wait for me to bring the Qilin Lord over to kill you." Lin Chongqing's projection on the ground frowned slightly. Seeing that the Demon Emperor was only focused on escaping from the fire pillar, he knew that the Demon Emperor was planning to save his strength for the Candle Dragon Lord's death. After all, from the start of the battle until now, the the demon emperor had not shown his demonic form, or rather, the true form of the origami. He had probably used less than half of his strength. He snorted coldly in his heart, but he did not continue to stand by the side. The origami that had turned into the Arctic dragon charged at the Candle Dragon Lord. The cold air on its body quickly extinguished the flames, creating a large amount of steam. The steam shrouded the entire second floor, and it quickly became boiling hot, making everyone feel like they were soaked in boiling water. If it were an ordinary person, they would have died from the heat, but for the other kings, it was only a slight feeling of heat. Get lost! The Torch Dragon Lord roared and rammed his head into the Arctic Ice Dragon, causing it to retreat. Lin Chongqing, let's work together to kill the Demon Emperor. Once we kill him, I'll leave immediately and won't continue to trouble you. Lin Chongqing sighed. Unfortunately, he had already thought of this and blocked my way. I can only work with him to kill you. I'm sorry. When the Demon Emperor heard his words, he slightly narrowed his eyes, and a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Without holding back, he turned into a pile of black goo and suddenly charged at the Candle Dragon Lord. When the Candle Dragon Lord saw the black goo, he roared in anger. The flames on his body rose again, and the temperature doubled. The metal walls were as red as soldering iron, but the tree-like mainframe was not affected much. It seemed that Lin Chongqing had already prepared for this. The last time you proposed to reclaim the Heavenly Confederation, you've already planned it, right? You know that I don't trust you to reclaim the Heavenly Confederation, so you stayed behind to guard him, and take this opportunity to conspire with him. The Candle Dragon Lord stared at the Demon Emperor angrily. The hatred he had for the Demon Emperor far exceeded his greed for Lin Chongqing, but he did not lose his mind. He sneered, "You want to get him alone, but I won't let you. I'll only kill you." After saying that, the flames on his body swept across, shrouding the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor's expression changed slightly, and he shouted to the origami on the other side, "What are you waiting for? Suppress him." The origami snorted and symbolically spat out a breath of cold air, which weakened the flames on the Candle Dragon Lord, but it quickly burned again. The Demon Emperor saw that the Candle Dragon Lord did not have the intention to attack, and he knew that he wanted to use the Candle Dragon Lord to weaken his combat power, so that he would have enough strength to deal with him after the battle. The Demon Emperor was furious, and his eyes became colder. He had already expected these changes, and it was also part of his plan. However, when it really happened, he still felt angry, and his desire to kill Lin Chongqing became stronger. "Phineas, you've trapped yourself. You could have become a god with me, but you chose to die with me. I'll fulfill your wish." The Candle Dragon Lord laughed, and his voice caused the walls to tremble slightly. He knew that he could not leave this place alive. Although Lin Chongqing seemed to have lowered his attack, his purpose was only to use him to weaken the Demon Emperor's combat power. Once he wanted to leave, the two of them would immediately kill him. Moreover, even if he escaped alive, he did not know where he could go. Although he did not want to believe it, deep in his heart, he had already believed it. "With my divine body, burn everything for me." The Candle Dragon Lord roared, and the restriction in his heart was released. The flames burned, and the temperature kept rising. His blood, tendons, and bones all turned into flames, and his huge dragon eyes turned into two floating fireballs. The terrifying temperature made even Dean and Crimson Moon, who were on the first floor of the underground base, feel extremely hot, as if their bodies were about to be burned. "Not good, this old dragon is going to die with the Demon Emperor." Crimson Moon's expression suddenly changed. She quickly put away the Dark Realm and rushed out of the underground base. Seeing that she left without saying anything, Dean quickly followed her. The two of them seemed to be fighting fiercely, but in fact, they were paying close attention to the situation below. They were extremely shocked by the Demon Emperor's betrayal, but it seemed to be what they wanted. If the Candle Dragon Lord was really dead, They could join forces with Lin Chongsheng to kill the Demon Emperor, and then fight for Lin Chongsheng. Maybe there would be some hope. Chapter 1189. Not long after Dean and Crimson Moon rushed out, another figure also jumped out of the ground. It was the Light King. As soon as the King of Light appeared, he saw Dean and Crimson Moon standing on the ground without their hands. A trace of vigilance flashed in his eyes, and he quickly distanced himself from them. Standing in another place, he said with a smile, "Crimson King, do you need my help to deal with him?" Fei Yu said indifferently, "If you want to make a move, go ahead and try." The Light King understood the meaning of her words. He chuckled and turned to look at the ground beneath his feet. Feeling the gradually rising temperature of the soles of his boots, he grinned and said, "I didn't expect His Majesty to join hands with Lin Chongsheng. It seems that Candle Dragon Master will definitely die this time. However, I don't know if His Majesty will be implicated by him and be dragged down with him. Don't let Lin Chongsheng take advantage of you." Fei Yu replied indifferently, "What kind of person is His Majesty? Why would he do something that he is not certain of?" The Radiant King smiled and said no more. Dean glanced at the two of them and faintly felt a strange feeling. He took a deep look at the Radiant King. The Radiant King should already know about Crimson Moon's betrayal, but he didn't seem too surprised. Was the Radiant King loyal to the Demon Emperor or himself? If it was the latter, then the meaning behind his words was thought-provoking, including his purpose. It was worth paying attention to. At this time, the metal on the ground gradually turned crimson, as if magma was about to erupt. The high temperature caused the surrounding air to become scorching hot and distorted. The water molecules in the air quickly evaporated, and the moisture in everyone's tanks was also rapidly draining. Their lips were cracked, and they actually felt thirsty. Very quickly, the three of them turned cold at the same time. The temperature was so high that it exceeded their expectations. If an ordinary person were to stand there, they would instantly be burned to a crisp, and the blood in their bodies would boil to death. The Radiant King took a deep breath and took the lead to rise into the sky, flying several hundred meters above the ground. Dean and Crimson Moon looked at each other and flew up one after another. They did not dare to stay on the ground. The underground base under their feet was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. It was even more terrible than a volcano. It was like a pressure cooker that could explode at any time. S3, the mainframe is still in the underground base. With such high temperatures, it won't burn out, right? There was a trace of worry in Dean's eyes. Although he knew that Lin Chongsheng would be extra careful, but the temperature was too terrible. He didn't know if Lin Chongsheng could cope with it. The temperature continued to rise. Hundreds of meters in the air, the three of them felt like they were being grilled on a stove. The heat was unbearable. Looking down from the sky, a huge red cube appeared on the ground. It was the outline of the underground base. The terrifying heat spread out from it, and the temperature of the entire host city was rising rapidly. Near the underground base, magma-like cracks appeared. Earth energy erupted from the cracks, and the underground water pipes nearby burst. A large amount of steam tore through the roads and shrouded the city in white fog. The white mist couldn't obstruct the vision of Dudian and the other two. Their faces became more and more dignified, and finally became a bit ugly. No one thought that the strength of the Candle Dragon Lord was so terrifying that he could release such a high temperature that was no less than that of a nuclear bomb. He was simply a human-shaped Y. The high temperature continued to expand. Dudian and the other two watched in fear as the temperature finally reached the limit. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, causing the entire world to tremble. Before the explosion, the three of them had a premonition of the impending explosion through the melted metal cracks that appeared on the underground base. But when the explosion really happened, they were still caught off guard. The violent sound scared the three of them. They felt that their hearts had stopped beating, and their eardrums were buzzing. All the thoughts in their minds were shaken away. They only saw the ground blossoming like a flame lotus, and countless golden flames spurted out. Among them, a large amount of burning metal splashed into the sky. The three of them instinctively used their abilities to defend themselves. Crimson Moon, covered in black mist, rushed out from within. Countless knights raised their shields to block in front of them. Dean's whole body was petrified, and sharp blades extended from his petrified skin. These sharp blades suddenly twisted at the top, turning into a rotating conical shield that kept spinning. On the other side, the Light King's t-shirt became incomparably white, as if transparent. His whole body seemed to have turned into light like a god. The next moment, the knights condensed in Crimson Moon's black mist were hit by the golden streamer and were instantly penetrated. The golden light splashed on the t-shirt, and the snow-white skin suddenly burned. The surface of the t-shirt melted, and the blood inside quickly evaporated. The bones were burned black. Dudien's blades rotated at high speed, and the golden streamer was thrown to Crimson Moon and the Light King, causing secondary damage to Crimson Moon. The Light King didn't use any defense. He seemed to be very confident in his ability to turn into light. But when the golden streamer passed through his t-shirt, his face suddenly changed, as if a sharp blade had pierced his t-shirt. There was a bit of pain between his eyebrows, and he was bitterly enduring. When the golden streamer passed through his t-shirt, he couldn't help but roar. His face was no longer kind. Instead, he glared at Dudien fiercely. It was the first time Dudien saw such a fierce look on his face. He was a little surprised, and then he sighed slightly in his heart. Soon, the golden fire rain gradually dissipated. Except for Dudien's face, which was calm as usual, Crimson Moon and the Light King's faces were very ugly. Especially when they looked at Dudien, their eyes were full of anger and killing intent. Dudien turned a blind eye to this. He cut off the conical shield that had been burned black and scanned the battlefield below. He saw that the ground base had completely exploded at this moment, like a magma pool. The surrounding earth cracked, and streams of magma flowed out, overflowing the ground. The whole host city became incomparably messy. The burning smoke condensed into gray clouds in the air, and gradually gathered into dark clouds. Dudien was just about to use his X-ray vision to penetrate the magma pool to take a look. Suddenly, a snow-white figure jumped out from inside, exuding an astonishing cold air, and fled to another place. S3. At the same time, a group of black sticky Y jumped out from the other side of the magma pool. The sticky Y formed a big mouth and roared, "Quickly, chase after him, don't let him escape with the mechanical heart." At a glance, the three of them knew that the black sticky Y was the Demon Emperor, and the snow-white figure that escaped was a four-winged ice bird. It should be the transformation of the origami that Lin Chongqing controlled. In the magma pool below, the temperature was still boiling. In the middle of the magma pool, they could faintly see that there was still a figure that exuded a terrifying heat standing there, but the body no longer looked like a human. It had become distorted, and it seemed to be the Candle Dragon Lord. The three of them did not have time to think, and quickly chased after the ice bird. The ice bird's speed was extremely fast, but Dudien and the other two could barely keep up with it even if they used their respective abilities. Especially the Light King, his speed was the fastest. Like an aurora, he was constantly closing the distance between him and the ice bird. Chapter 1190. Dean had long seen that the Light King was not loyal to the Demon King. Otherwise, he would not have come out with them and helped the Demon King. He used his X-ray vision to look at the ice bird. He saw that there was a complicated mechanical ball that looked like a sea urchin embedded in its body. He knew that it was Lin Chongqing's body, the core of the virtual host, the mechanical heart. It could be said that it was the engine of the virtual host and the brain of the virtual world. Once the mechanical heart was destroyed, the virtual world would be closed. Even if it was reopened, it would be a rebooted world. Lin Chongqing would be automatically cancelled like a virus. It seems that he really controlled the origami. Is it a consciousness invasion? Dean narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked behind him. He saw the Demon King in the form of a handsome young man. 2 huge black wings were flapping behind his back. He was chasing after them quickly. However, his speed was not fast. Moreover, the Demon King's breath was a little weak. His face was pale. It seemed that he was seriously injured. Dean frowned as he thought of the horrifying explosion. He asked himself if he was deep in the depths of the explosion. He might not have survived. It seemed that there was still a gap between him and the Demon King and the ice bird origami. In the blink of an eye, the ice bird flew to the edge of the host city. The towering city wall was clearly visible. There were no citizens in the city. There were only mechanical wreckage and collapsed buildings caused by the earthquake. Although these buildings were earthquake-proof, the earthquake caused by the explosion of the Candle Dragon Lord caused a chain reaction. It had a great impact on the city. It was not comparable to the tremor caused by the giant beast outside the city. The ice bird suddenly stopped in front of the city wall. It turned its head to look at Dean and the others. The Demon King was coming from afar. The bird's head turned into a human, but it was expressionless. It said, "The 3 of you can make it. Why are they chasing me?" Dean slightly frowned. He believed that Lin Chongqing knew that he knew the reason. Lin Chongqing's question was probably to ask Crimson Moon and the Radiant King. Moreover, Dean also heard the meaning behind the question. Why? Crimson Moon was interested. It seemed that she did not know. Hearing her words, the Radiant King also revealed a curious look. Ice Bird said indifferently, "Because I know the way to become a god, and I also know how to solve the problem of all the monsters and corpses in this world. Now Candle Dragon Lord has self-immolated, and the Demon Emperor has been seriously injured by him. If the 3 of you cooperate with me to kill the Demon Emperor, I can tell you the way. However, even if you know the way, it will be very difficult for you to become a god with your conditions." Dean's eyes flashed. He was more and more sure that Lin Chongqing had occupied part of the ice bird's consciousness. It was Lin Chongqing's incarnation. Lin Chongqing hadn't found the divine fetus and was facing the attack of the Demon Emperor and the Candle Dragon King. He had to find a spare tire to fight. At this moment, Lin Chongqing's words were obviously directed at him, Fei Yu and the Radiant King. On one hand, he was telling him that he could solve the problem of the undeads and asking him to cooperate. On the other hand, he was enticing Fei Yu and the others to become gods. Humph! At this time, the Demon Emperor had already rushed to the side of Dean and the others. He had already heard Icebird's words. He snorted and said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. It seems that you are at the end of your rope to use such a low-level alienation." Fei Yu smiled gently and said, "Yes, I didn't expect such stupid words to come out of his mouth. I advise you to be obedient." Before finishing her words, she suddenly made a move. Her palm carried a terrifying black mist and slapped toward the Demon Emperor next to her. "You're courting death." The Demon Emperor snorted with a bit of anger, but he was not surprised or caught off guard. It seemed that he had expected it. His whole body was covered with dark energy and he punched. With a loud bang, the black fist collided with the mist-shrouded palm. Crimson Moon let out a muffled groan as her body was sent flying backwards, putting some distance between her and the Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor withdrew his fist and said in a cold voice, "You dare to betray me?" The coldness in Fei Yu's eyes suddenly disappeared, and she said with a faint smile, "What betrayal? I just want to know whether what he said is true or false." The Demon Emperor sneered, "You believe such stupid words. It seems that you are also very stupid. So, you and Candle Dragon Master didn't kill him to become a god?" Fei Yu chuckled and said, "Can you guarantee that?" The Demon Emperor's face turned cold. He looked straight at her but did not answer. He could lie and pretend, but he could see that Fei Yu and the Light King next to her already had an answer in their hearts, so there was no need for him to lie anymore. Since there is a chance to become a god in front of you, you don't tell us. Why are you still loyal to such a master? Fei Yu chuckled and glanced at the Light King next to her. What do you think? The Light King smiled and said, His Majesty didn't tell us, so he naturally has his reasons. King of Scarlet, you should apologize to His Majesty. Don't pretend. He won't give you another chance to sneak attack. Fei Yu interrupted his words and coldly snorted. Just now, even my sneak attack was blocked by him. In his heart, he has never trusted us. What's more, you came out to watch but did not help. Do you think he won't settle this account with you? The smile on the Light King's face was a little stiff. It seemed that his face was trembling. Finally, he took a deep breath and sighed. He slowly floated to Fei Yu's side and said to the Demon Emperor, Your Majesty, you don't trust us. It's very difficult for us. The Demon Emperor's face was cold as he glanced at Dean next to him. Dean didn't expect that their relationship would break in an instant and let Lin Chongqing get what he wanted. He sighed in his heart. If it wasn't for Fei Yu's extraordinary strength as a divine fetus, it was estimated that she would continue to pretend to be courteous like the Light King. She wouldn't have shed all pretense of cordiality and let Lin Chongqing sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight while they, the original invaders, became the prey. If you tell me the way to deal with the undead, I can help you, Dean said to Icebird. Icebird raised her eyebrows and said, I'll naturally tell you after we get rid of the Demon Emperor. I can promise you. As long as you tell me, I'll definitely help you, Dean said. He didn't want to fight with the Demon Emperor. He faintly felt that the one who was really injured was not the Demon Emperor but Lin Chongqing. Moreover, the Demon Emperor was already aware of Fei Yu's hidden identity and strength. Therefore, he deliberately attacked Candle Dragon Lord to give Fei Yu a chance to jump out. He hoped to get what he wanted before fighting. Moreover, the initiative was in his hands, so he was qualified to negotiate. Icebird's face turned gloomy. She stared at Dean for a moment and suddenly sneered. I've changed my mind. Demon Emperor, the two next to me, I suggest that we kill him first and then discuss other things. Is that okay? Dean was startled. The Demon Emperor's eyes flashed and he said in a cold voice, One less hindrance. Not bad. Fei Yu frowned slightly. She had formed an alliance with Dean and had agreed to deal with the Demon Emperor together. Dean could be considered as her help. However, she thought that the Light King was standing beside her at this moment. After the Demon Emperor was dealt with, it would be easier to deal with the Light King and Lin Chongqing. Moreover, she wouldn't have to worry about the Light King and Dean ganging up to threaten her. Chapter 1191. Dean's face changed. Lin Chongqing had been chased to a dead end, and they had joined hands to annihilate him. But now the situation had reversed. Dean, who was inconspicuous, had become the target of everyone's attack. He could guess the reason why Crimson Moon agreed, but he didn't know why the Demon Emperor agreed too. Was it just because they were worried that he would help Lin Chongqing? He felt that the reason was not so simple, but he couldn't think of another reason. Seeing that they were about to attack, he said to the Demon Emperor, I can help you deal with Lin Chongqing. I know his secret. No need, the Demon Emperor said indifferently. Dean was startled. Looking at the Demon Emperor's cold expression, he suddenly realized what the Demon Emperor was really thinking. He was planning to clear the place, which was exactly what Lin Chongqing wanted. He could clear out the inconspicuous bystanders, and then cooperate with Crimson Moon or Lin Chongqing to deal with the other side. Finally, Lin Chongqing would be left to enjoy. Thinking of this, he looked at Crimson Moon and said quickly, We formed an alliance before. You can't go back on your word. This is their plan. Crimson Moon, who was about to attack, paused. It was not because of Dean's words that she couldn't go back on her word. For people of their status, a promise was just a plan. There was no feeling of embarrassment after breaking a promise. That was the mentality of ordinary people. She also felt that the Demon Emperor's reaction was a bit strange. If it was a plan, could it be they were all underground before? Maybe they had already conspired at that time. The Demon Emperor already knew your identity and strength. He deliberately killed Candle Dragon Lord to give you a chance to betray him, Dean said hurriedly, hoping to persuade Crimson Moon. Otherwise, he would face the most desperate situation. Humph! Ice Bird snorted and said, "You're about to die and you still? Quit? Lie? Coward? Armpit? Sled? My nephew wishes to dong 7 quite a daughter? Lusuyan Polypus? Guanidin? Mu? Soul? 1 crooked torrent and circle?" Crimson Moon frowned slightly and hesitated. Bing Niao sneered and said, "What? Do you really believe his nonsense? If I join forces with this old devil, why would I be afraid of him? Wouldn't it be a piece of cake to get rid of you? Why should I waste my breath on you guys? Since this person is swaying back and forth, wanting to help the Demon Emperor and me at the same time, keeping him alive will only be a disaster." The Radiant King glanced at Crimson Moon beside him and said in a low voice, "What he said makes sense." Fei Yu's eyes flashed for a moment before she gritted her teeth and shouted, "Kill him first!" After that, he took the lead and rushed toward Dean. His whole body was filled with black mist and turned into a dark domain. A large number of mist illusionary monsters rushed out and pounced on Dean. Dean's face flushed with anger. He hadn't expected that Crimson Moon would be moved with just a few words. Did she really think that his strength was enough to deal with the Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing? Just how confident was she in herself? In other words, in her eyes, his value was the same as that of the Radiant King, or even lower, so she could abandon him. In such a situation, it was naturally the most suitable to eliminate a marginal character like him first. The situation that Lin Chongqing had originally thought was certain death had been reversed with just a few words. Even though the Demon Emperor and Crimson Moon had their own agendas in this, it was still not an easy feat. "Get out of my way!" Dean roared. The sharp blades on his body surged and shot out with a loud bang, beheading all the black mist monsters. At this time, the Demon Emperor rushed over quickly, dark energy surging all over his body. His arms suddenly ejected a group of ferocious thorns, which were countless needle-sharp vines that turned into vines that wrapped around his body. On the other side, a pure white gem appeared on the back of the Radiant King's hand. He raised his hand and shot out beams of incomparably sharp light beams that had extremely strong penetrating power, penetrating through his neck and arms. He could feel the blood and bones in his body burning after being penetrated by the light beams. In the blink of an eye, the 3 of them joined forces. On the other side, the Ice Bird on the other side spat out a mist that also enveloped Dean. Dean instantly fell into a hopeless situation. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with rage. His eyes were bloodshot and incomparably ferocious. His gaze swept over Crimson Moon, the Demon Emperor, the Radiant King, and Lin Chongqing's faces. Everyone's expression was incomparably indifferent, as if they wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible and then move on to the next battle. He thought of a saying, "I'm meat on the chopping block." In the eyes of Crimson Moon, the Demon Emperor, and the others, he was meat on the chopping block, ready to be slaughtered. But he knew that he wasn't. He could suddenly feel the grievance and anger of the Candle Dragon Master. No wonder he chose to die together with the Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it. "Since you want to kill me, then be prepared to die." Dean roared fiercely, letting out a lion-like roar that shook the entire sky. Countless sharp blades suddenly shot out of his body. The black blades were attached to thick flames, and they instantly cut through Crimson Moon's domain of darkness, cutting out a line of clear sky from the darkness. On the other side, He swung his blades and cut off the group of thorns that the Demon Emperor had transformed into, and stabbed straight at his neck. The Demon Emperor frowned slightly, as if he didn't expect that this king cultivated by the Federation could burst out such a powerful aura and power, which was not inferior to the Radiant King who had been by his side for many years. He didn't want to fight head-on, so he retreated slightly to avoid Dean's blades. Crimson Moon. Dean's eyes were bloodshot, filled with destruction madness and extreme killing intent. Among the three of them, Crimson Moon had the deepest grudge against him, and she had hurt him the most. He couldn't wait to peel off her skin and pull out her bones. At this moment, he didn't pay attention to the Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing beside him, and directly pounced on Crimson Moon. Crimson Moon's expression changed slightly. It seemed that she didn't expect Dean to choose her as the main target, and she didn't expect Dean's sudden burst of energy to be so powerful. It was not inferior to the Radiant King at all, and it was several times stronger than the previous battle in the underground base. It was completely beyond the scope of ordinary kings. Whether it was the speed or strength of genetic reconstruction, it was incomparable to ordinary kings. Crimson Moon didn't want to expose her strength prematurely, so she retreated step by step. She was forced to retreat by Dean's split blades, while the Radiant King was still leisurely releasing beams of light at Dean. He had no intention of engaging in close combat. "Don't you want to become a god? Don't you want to hide your strength? Aren't you very confident in yourself?" Dean's body was covered with sharp blades that extended hundreds of meters. His body was demonized to tens of meters in size. He was like a weird tyrant. His body was covered with sharp blades, including his face. His hair had already condensed into 2 dark axes, which could cause terrible damage if he hit his head with it. From head to toe, there was not a single part of his body that wasn't a sharp blade. This terrifying image surprised Lin Chongqing and the Demon Emperor, especially the Demon Emperor, who didn't know much about Dean, and didn't expect such a powerful king to be hidden here. He suddenly understood why Lin Chongqing chose to kill Dean first. This was definitely a hidden variable. Crimson Moon was repeatedly defeated by Dean's attacks, and the dark domain around her body was riddled with holes. Dean's blades were covered with flames, and her black mist was directly torn apart, but it wasn't a pure physical attack. She tried to use her own bones to create a shield to resist Dean's attack, but it was smashed into pieces by Dean's blades, and the cut surface was incomparably neat, which surprised her. Dean's blades were far more terrifying than she had expected. "You're courting death." Crimson Moon saw that Dean kept chasing after her, and anger surged in her heart. She knew that she couldn't continue to retreat, and under Dean's storm-like attacks, she could only reveal her hidden strength, otherwise she wouldn't have a chance to survive. However, once she exposed this strength, the next situation would be out of her control, which made her extremely angry, and she couldn't wait to tear Dean into pieces. Seeing her angry appearance, Dean felt that the anger in his heart had been vented a little, and he couldn't help but laugh, but after laughing a few times, he felt a twitch in his chest, and his face couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 1192. Welcome. Taking a breath of cold air, Dean clenched his teeth again, and endured the chill pain in his heart. He knew that his unscrupulous squandering of his tea power would only give the monster in his heart more nutrition and wake up earlier. But at this point, strategies and calculations were useless. Since he could not survive, he might as well destroy everything. Anyway, he was tired of this random world. Devouring domain. At this time, Crimson Moon's face was full of anger. With a low shout, finger-thick holes appeared all over her body. They were incomparably dark, and a large amount of black smoke sprayed out from them. This smoke was like silk, thick and dense, and it seemed to be consciously shrouding Dean. Omega Delta. Omega. Although Dean was angry, at this moment, he maintained his X-ray vision. When the specially constructed black smoke sprayed out from Crimson Moon's tea, He saw that the air that came into contact with it was quickly swallowed up. The oxygen and other components in the air were quickly decomposed and assimilated. This was a power that her previous dark domain did not possess. He did not dodge, nor did he have the time to dodge. Instead, he rushed head-on. Whoosh! Suddenly, two huge blade wings spread out behind him and violently flapped, rolling up a small hurricane, blocking the black smoke released by Crimson Moon. This black smoke was more special than he had imagined. The hurricane could not completely blow it away. However, he did not expect to rely on the wind alone to break Crimson Moon's ability, as long as he could stop it from spreading. Reconstruction. Dean stared at the black smoke. His X-ray vision was frantically penetrating. His X-ray vision was more like a microscope. At this moment, it was frantically shrinking, peeling off the structure of the black smoke layer by layer. He could see the deepest source, the structure and changes of each particle in his eyes. It turned out to be an incomparably complex moving pattern. Ordinary people would feel dizzy and even suffer from trypophobia just by looking at it, but he used all the memory sponge tea in his brain to forcibly imprint this moving pattern. At the same time, his tea body quickly changed according to the pattern imprinted on it. He used a demonized monstrous limb as an experimental tea to disassemble and reconstruct the genes inside, simulating the black smoke. Soon, the monstrous limb that he had demonized began to emit black smoke. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a black fog. The black fog seemed to be floating in the air, but he felt that he could control it. It was as if there was something invisible, like a thread, that connected the black fog to him. From a biological point of view, there were no meridians or nerves in the black fog, so it was impossible to control it. However, at this moment, he could truly feel his control over the black fog, and he could also feel the temperature in the air through the black fog. S3. He didn't know why Crimson Moon had created this black mist, but he suddenly understood something. The ultimate goal of their evolution was to become God, and since God was omnipotent and had no form, didn't this black mist create a God? Didn't this God manifest this saying? Life is not just blood, it may be something else, such as my stone-like skin. Dean's eyes flashed a trace of understanding. Although his previous demonization didn't have human blood, but he didn't really understand this point. It was like a lot of people heard a lot of principles, but never really understand the truth inside. Only when you personally understand it, then you will have the words and deeds, and it will be futile for outsiders to teach you. All of this happened in a very short time, only a few seconds. The demon overlord and Lin Chongqing were not in a hurry, so they didn't interrupt Dean's attack on Crimson Moon. Crimson Moon was shocked when she saw Dean's monstrous limb turned into black fog. She didn't expect that her best ability would be copied by Dean in just a few seconds. Even if she knew that Dean had God's tea quality and potential, wasn't his learning speed too fast? Even if it was her, she might not be able to learn such a super difficult ability in such a short period of time. The demon overlord and the Light King saw the black fog released by Dean, and their originally scattered attacks suddenly stopped. They were so shocked that they forgot to continue attacking. The demon overlord was shocked. He didn't expect that Dean's identity was not just a king, but an existence like them. After the Light King recovered from the shock, a trace of jealousy and killing intent flashed in his eyes, but he quickly hid it. However, the attack in his hand quickly increased by several times, and the density of the light beam was far higher than before. It was fast and sharp, easily piercing through Dean's sharp blade and directly penetrating his T-body. Dean was about to use the black fog to compete with Crimson Moon's domain, but was suddenly interrupted by the Light King. His eyes were boiling with killing intent, and he coldly glanced at the Light King. The meaning of warning in his eyes was very obvious. The Light King didn't seem to understand. His face was indifferent, and the light on the back of his hand flashed constantly. Dean's T-body was pierced by the light beam, and pain came from all over his body, including his heart. However, the light beam disappeared after entering his heart, as if it was digested. However, the light beam in other parts of his body broke, and his HP exploded. His whole body burst into a cloud of blood mist, and he was in a very sorry state. Dean was just thinking of a killer move to deal with Crimson Moon, but he was beaten by the Light King. The anger in his heart was about to overflow. He roared and couldn't wait to abandon Crimson Moon and pounce on the Light King. But he knew that once there was a distance between him and Crimson Moon, he would immediately be attacked from both front and back. Crimson Moon would not miss the opportunity to kill him. After I kill her, I'll look for you. Dean stared at the Light King, and a crystal T suddenly appeared on his T-watch. When the Light King's light beam hit the crystal T again, it suddenly bounced back. However, it didn't bounce in a straight line, but slanted to the other side, and almost hit the Demon Emperor. The Light King didn't expect that Dean would use such a method to counter his attack. He couldn't help but frown, and his hand movements slowed down. If he wanted to continue to cause damage to Dean, he could only fight in close combat, or use his real ability, but he didn't want to expose it too early. After thinking about it again and again, he held back and slowed down the speed of the S attack. From time to time, he would use the S attack to attack Dean's eyeball, throat, and other weak points. Dean's vision became clearer. This eyeball was specifically staring at the Light King, and the eyeball penetrated his T and arms. When it penetrated into the Light King's brain, Dean saw a hairy and short white fluffy insect entrenched in the soft tissues of the Light King's brain. This insect was obviously different from the insects he had seen before, and it had a large and eye-catching golden eye. He didn't have time to think about the special reason of this insect, but he remembered that this was the Light King's weakness. This was also the difference between the Light King and the God Fetus. The God Fetus didn't rely on the demon insect, so they had no weakness. Once the King's demon insect was erased, he would be crippled or die. Welcome S3-1. Dean sucked in a breath of cold air and gritted his teeth again, enduring the pain in his heart. He knew that his unscrupulous squandering of his T's power would only let the monster in his heart get more nutrition and wake up earlier. But at this point, strategies and calculations were all useless. Since he couldn't survive, he might as well destroy everything. In any case, he was already tired of this random world. Devouring domain. At this time, Crimson Moon's face was full of anger. She shouted in a low voice, and finger-thick holes appeared all over her body. They were incomparably dark, and a large amount of black smoke sprayed out. This smoke was like silk, thick and dense, and it enveloped Dean as if it had a consciousness. Although Dean was angry, he maintained his X-ray vision. When the specially constructed black smoke sprayed out from Crimson Moon's T, he could see that the air that came into contact with it was quickly devoured. The oxygen and other components in the air were quickly decomposed and assimilated. This was a power that her previous dark domain didn't have. He didn't dodge, and he didn't have time to dodge. Instead, he rushed forward. Whoosh! Suddenly, two huge blade wings spread out from his back and violently flapped, rolling up a small hurricane, blocking the black smoke released by Crimson Moon. This black smoke was more special than he had imagined. The hurricane couldn't completely blow it away, but he didn't expect to rely on the wind alone to break Crimson Moon's ability, as long as he could stop it from spreading. Reconstruction. Dean stared at the black smoke, his X-ray vision crazily penetrating it. His X-ray vision was more like a microscope than an X-ray vision. At this moment, it was crazily shrinking, peeling off the structure of the black smoke layer by layer. He could see the deepest source, the structure and changes of each particle in his eyes. It turned out to be an incomparably complex moving pattern. Ordinary people would feel dizzy just by looking at it, and they might even suffer from trypophobia. But he used all the memory sponge T in his brain to forcibly imprint this moving pattern. At the same time, His tea body quickly changed according to the pattern imprinted on it. He used a demonized monstrous limb as an experimental tea, dismantling and reconstructing the genes inside, simulating the black smoke. Soon, the monstrous limb that he had demonized began to emit black smoke. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a black fog. The black fog seemed to be floating in the air, but he felt like he could control it. It was as if there was something invisible, like a thread, that connected the black fog to himself. From a biological point of view, there were no meridians or nerves in this black smoke, so it was impossible to control it. But at this moment, he could really feel his control over the black smoke. In addition, he could also feel the temperature in the air through the black smoke. He didn't know why Crimson Moon had constructed this black smoke, but he suddenly realized that the ultimate direction of their evolution was God. Since God was omnipotent and had no form, didn't this black smoke construct a tea body? Wasn't it the tea body that manifested this saying? Life isn't just blood. It might be something else, like my stone skin. A glimmer of understanding flashed in Dean's eyes. Although he had demonized many times before, none of his previous limbs were blood. But he hadn't truly understood this point. It was just like how many people heard a lot of great truths, but never truly understood the truth behind them. Only by personally comprehending it could one have the words and actions, and it would be futile no matter how much others taught him. All of this happened in a very short period of time, only a few seconds. The Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing were not in a hurry to attack, so they didn't interrupt Dean's attack on Crimson Moon. Crimson Moon was shocked when she saw the black smoke after Dean atomized one of his monstrous limbs. She didn't expect that her best ability would be copied by Dean in just a few seconds. Even if she knew that Dean had the tea quality and potential of God, wasn't his learning speed too fast? Even if it was her, she might not be able to learn such a super difficult ability in such a short period of time. The Demon Emperor and the Light King saw the black smoke released by Dean, and their originally scattered attacks suddenly stopped. They were so shocked that they forgot to continue attacking. The Demon Emperor's face was full of shock. He didn't expect that Dean's identity wasn't just a king, but an existence like them. After the Light King recovered from the shock, a trace of jealousy and killing intent flashed in his eyes, but he quickly hid it. However, the attack in his hand quickly increased by several times. The density of the light beam was far more than before, and it was fast and sharp. It easily pierced through Dean's sharp blade, and directly penetrated into his tea. Dean was about to use the black smoke to compete with Crimson Moon's domain, but was suddenly interrupted by the Light King. His eyes were full of killing intent, and he coldly glanced at the Light King. The meaning of warning in his eyes was very obvious. The Light King didn't seem to understand. His face was indifferent, and the light on the back of his hand kept flashing. S3. Dean's tea was pierced by the light beam, and pain came from all parts of his body, including his heart. However, the light beam disappeared after entering his heart, as if it was digested. However, the light beam on other parts of his tea broke, and his HP exploded. His whole body burst into a bloody mist, and he was in a very sorry state. Dean was just thinking of a killer move to deal with Crimson Moon, but he was hurt all over by the Light King. The anger in his heart was about to overflow, and he roared. He couldn't wait to abandon Crimson Moon and pounce on the Light King. But he knew that once there was a distance between him and Crimson Moon, he would immediately be attacked from both front and back. Crimson Moon would not miss the opportunity to kill him. After I kill her, I'll look for you. Dean stared at the Light King, and a crystal tea suddenly appeared on his tea watch. When the Light King's light beam hit the crystal tea again, it suddenly bounced back. However, it didn't bounce in a straight line, but slanted to the other side, and almost hit the Demon Emperor. The Light King didn't expect that Dean would use such a method to counter his attack. He couldn't help but frown, and his hand movements slowed down. If he wanted to continue to cause damage to Dean, he could only fight in close combat, or use his real ability, but he didn't want to expose it too early. After thinking about it again and again, he still held back, and slowed down the speed of the attack. From time to time, he would attack Dean's eyeball, throat, and other weak points. Dean's vision became clearer, and this eyeball was specifically staring at the Light King. The eyeball penetrated through his T and arms, and when it penetrated into his brain, Dean saw a hairy ice worm with many short, fluffy white hairs entrenched in the soft tissues of the brain. This ice worm was obviously different from the ice worms he had seen before, and it had a huge, eye-catching golden eye. Chapter 1193. At this time, Crimson Moon, who was in front of Dean, saw that he had learned her devour domain. She immediately changed the structure of the domain, mixing toxins into the black mist so that Dean's black mist could not assimilate it. In this way, relying on her own quantity, she could in turn devour part of the black mist that Dean had demonized and feed it into her own tonic. Free cereal. All these changes were very clear in Dean's eyes. When he saw Crimson Moon's black mist change again, Dean immediately guessed her thoughts, but at this moment, he had no time to continue to change the structure. After all, one was an autonomous structure, and the other was a simulation. He would always be a beat slower. Moreover, Crimson Moon's black mist had already shrouded at this moment. Flame! Dean let out a low roar, and the black mist suddenly turned into a crimson blood mist. Then, like a huge fireball, it collided with Crimson Moon's black mist. Suddenly, Crimson Moon's black mist shrank rapidly like ice and snow, and was gradually defeated by Dean's flaming blood mist. The blazing temperature of the blood mist suppressed Crimson Moon's black mist. Although it was mixed with toxins, it was all burned to ashes in front of the high temperature. Crimson Moon's face changed. She quickly used her mind to construct a layer of ice within the black mist, which emitted a strong chill to contend with Dean's flaming blood mist. However, she soon discovered that the temperature of Dean's blood mist was extremely terrifying, and the ice she constructed could not stop it at all. Only if she exerted all her strength and raised the temperature of the ice to more than -200 degrees could she suppress Dean's flaming blood mist. He has a deeper mastery of the flame structure than I do. Crimson Moon quickly realized this and quickly shrank back into the black mist. She did not touch Dean. Although the latter did not continue to simulate her black mist structure, he added the flame structure, and the destructive power had surpassed her. This was her specialty, but she was defeated by Dean in this aspect. Thinking that Dean was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered under her scalpel, and now he could defeat her in the field she was good at, she felt a burst of shame and anger. Her heart was filled with hatred and anger for Dean, and there was a strong killing intent. Want to run? Dean saw Crimson Moon retreat and immediately sneered. Don't you want to kill me? Why are you running away? How dare you provoke me? Crimson Moon was enraged. Her eyes flashed with a blood-red light as she abruptly stopped in her tracks. She naturally wouldn't fall for Dean's provocation, but she knew that it was meaningless for her to continue to retreat. From Lin Chongqing and the Devil King's casual attacks, it could be seen that they wanted to borrow Dean's hand to deal with her. Even if she called out for help at this moment, they would only do it symbolically and wouldn't use their full strength. But if she threatened him, she might end up like Dean and become the leader of the arrows. In turn, they would cooperate with Dean to attack her. Here, there was no true alliance. One could only rely on oneself. S3. She regretted agreeing to Lin Chongqing's proposal. She paid the most in besieging Dean. She ignored the damage she caused to Dean and Dean's hatred towards her. People would always forget the people they hurt, but they would remember the people who hurt them. Since you ran away last time, I'll make sure you die this time. Crimson Moon gnashed her teeth and fiercely glared at Dean. Suddenly, her pupils turned silvery white and a nearly transparent wave surged out from her eyes. Buzz! Dean, who was chasing after Crimson Moon, felt a shock in his brain and a sense of dizziness. When he regained consciousness, he felt severe pain all over his body. He saw that many sharp blades on his body had been cut off. In addition, there was a burning sensation on his forehead. It was the light beam of Light King's S attack. Fortunately, he had strengthened his skull, so the S attack didn't penetrate his brain. Otherwise, although he wouldn't die, his memory would be destroyed. "You're courting death." Dean's eyes were cold. He knew that the previous dizziness was mostly because of Crimson Moon. He saw the strange wave transmitted from her silvery white pupils. It seemed to be some kind of special ability that specialized in attacking the brain. It was very complex, far more complex than the structure of the Black Mist. In this rapidly changing battle, there was no time to observe and copy, so he could only think of ways to defend. He instantly searched all the memories in his brain, including a part of Lin Chongqing's memory that hadn't been forgotten. Soon, he found a special material, which was the metal structure of the magic insect spaceship. This was the memory of Lin Chongqing dismantling the magic insect spaceship. When Dean saw the metal structure of the spaceship, he didn't even think about it and immediately reconstructed his brain's skull to look like the special metal. But the skull was not metal, it was still bone, just according to the density and element arrangement of the metal. If he could see his own head, he should be able to see the strange texture on the surface of the skull. This time, even my own X-ray vision can't penetrate it, so it shouldn't hurt my brain. Dean thought and at the same time said to Crimson Moon, "Let's join forces to kill Light King, and I'll help you kill the Demon Emperor. How about it?" Crimson Moon was startled. She didn't expect Dean to suddenly propose an alliance. They had already shed all pretense of cordiality, and the battle had reached this point, but Dean still wanted to form an alliance with her? But she quickly reacted. So what if they shed all pretense of cordiality? There was only mutual benefit between them, and Dean's proposal was completely in line with Dean's interests. If it were her, she would be willing to do the same. Okay. After a little thought, Crimson Moon immediately agreed. She could see that Dean's strength was not much worse than hers, and was far stronger than the Light King. The latter's weakness was too obvious. For other kings, such a weakness was normal, and they could protect it. But in the face of their ever-changing attacks, the Light King simply couldn't protect the magic insect in his skull. The original aggressive and hateful appearance of the battle suddenly turned into an alliance. This change caught the Demon Emperor, Lin Chongqing, and the Light King by surprise, especially the Light King. When he heard Crimson Moon agree, his face suddenly changed, and his handsome cheeks became distorted with anger. He roared, "Crimson King, how can you go back on your words? Isn't this my style?" Crimson Moon smiled. "A mere king dares to stir up trouble here." Dean stopped his momentum of rushing towards Crimson Moon, and coldly looked at the Light King. The released flames of blood mist rushed towards the Light King. The Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing stopped their attacks at the same time, and looked on with cold eyes. It seemed that they didn't want to interfere anymore. S3. The battle in the sky instantly turned into a battle between Dean, Crimson Moon, and the Light King, and the three of them were supposed to be in an alliance. Despicable earthlings! The Light King roared, and his whole body shone brightly. His T-body turned into light, and he rushed into the distance, instantly surpassing the speed of sound. "Particle transformation, I can do it too!" Dean snorted, and his whole body turned into particles like an unreal projection. His speed increased, and he chased after the Light King at full speed. A spiral hole appeared on his back, and strong wind spurted out from it, pushing his T-body even faster, and he slowly caught up to the Light King. On the other side, Crimson Moon slightly narrowed her eyes. When they were chasing after Lin Chongqing, the Light King was the fastest, and she thought that she was the only one hiding her strength. She didn't expect that Dean was also disguised. Soon, Crimson Moon also turned into particles, and caught up to the Light King. With a swoosh, Dean raised his hand and threw out a flame blade. Even if the Light King was in a particle state, he would still be injured, because this was not a pure physical attack. Seeing the flame blade whistling towards him, the Light King roared, and his body suddenly split into two. After the flame blade brushed past his T-body, the T-body closed again, and he continued to escape. "You can't escape." Crimson Moon sneered, and raised her hand, and a black mist transformed into a spear flew out, like a pear-blossom spear, and surrounded the Light King. The Light King's face was ugly, and suddenly his whole body shone brightly, and countless light arrows shot out, colliding with Crimson Moon's black mist spear, and cancelled each other out. Crimson Moon raised her hand again, and countless black spears came out. The Light King continued to use light to block, colliding with the spears every second. It was incomparably gorgeous, and in just a few minutes he had collided hundreds of times. Chapter 1194. "Don't force me!" Light King gasped, his face suddenly hideous. "Don't think that I don't have the ability to drag you down with me. I'm willing to withdraw. If you continue to chase me, I'll kill whoever chases me first." Crimson Moon frowned slightly and slowed down her movements. She was a little hesitant. During her time in the Empire, she had learned some of the Light King's secrets and knew that he was no ordinary king. The demonic insect in his mind was extremely powerful and had long since devoured the human will in his body. That demonic insect was completely in control of his mind, unlike other kings who were only affected by its interference and subconscious catalysis. "Who knows when you'll come back just because you say so?" Dean saw Crimson Moon's hesitation. He raised his eyebrows and imitated Light King's indifferent expression. "If everyone is like you, I'm also willing to withdraw and watch the tigers fight. Wouldn't it be better to intervene at the end?" "You?" Light King glared at him. He didn't expect that it was not Crimson Moon, but this king of the Federation who had little hatred for him. "What do you think?" Dean looked at Ice Bird and Demon Emperor who were chasing behind. Ice Bird was Lin Chongqing's incarnation. He didn't take advantage of the chaos to leave. Otherwise, Demon Emperor would definitely chase after him. At that time, Dean and Crimson Moon who were chasing Light King would also be pulled back. They would join forces with Demon Emperor to kill Lin Chongqing. Therefore, he followed them indifferently as if he didn't care that he was the target of everyone. Demon Emperor looked indifferent and didn't respond. Ice Bird didn't have any expression as if she was not involved. Dean sneered. "Since you don't want to be the first bird, then let him go. Anyway, I won't be the one fighting to the end." Then he stopped attacking. Crimson Moon's expression changed slightly. If she let Light King run away now, it would give him time to recuperate. If she was weak when he came back, it would ultimately help him. Her eyes flashed as she looked at Demon Emperor. "Your Majesty, if you don't say anything, then let him go." Demon Emperor said indifferently, "Since he is trouble, then solve it. Why look for trouble for yourself?" The King of Light's complexion changed and he said angrily, "Your Majesty, I've followed you for so many years, fighting in the north and south. Even if I don't have any meritorious service, I've worked hard. I'm willing to help you, so why do you want to abandon me?" The Demon Emperor said indifferently, "Do you not have an answer to this question? You already knew?" The Radiant King's expression suddenly changed, and he looked at him with incomparable malevolence. "But I had already guessed that you knew, and you even knew her hidden secret. She is the same as you. But you pretended that you didn't know. You ambushed Candle Dragon Lord to give her a chance to escape. You must have joined forces with this Lin Chongqing a long time ago. Once this muddle-headed worm and I died, you would surround and kill Crimson Moon." The confused worm he was referring to was Dean. Dean didn't say anything, but Crimson Moon's expression changed slightly. If she hadn't been willing to believe it before, she was now feeling a little uneasy. If it was just the Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing, she felt that she could barely handle them. But the key was that the Radiant King was dead, and there was Dean, whose strength was still unknown. This made it impossible for her to control the situation. "What's the point of struggling on your deathbed, great sage?" The Demon Emperor's eyes turned slightly cold. "Do you think I don't know the purpose of you compromising by my side? You are all slaves that my father captured and used to guard my clan's mausoleum and territory. You lowly kneel in extravagant hopes that one day you will be able to stand up, but you don't know that I have already seen through your thoughts. You have been kneeling for too long, and your vision is too limited. Don't you want to return to your own planet? Don't you want to find the formula for the perfect life? Humph, it's a pity that the formula already exists. Your extreme ice demon insect clan had already completed the experiment on Lin Chongqing more than 200 years ago, but unfortunately, he escaped. Do you know why every time the crimson moon descends, I gather all the kings to discuss war matters? Sea beasts? Snow apes? I don't care about those things at all. I just want you to know your place under my eyes, and not give you a chance to snitch on me." Speaking up to here, the Demon Emperor slightly sneered and said, "The apostles that you secretly sent to the Federation were also killed. Do you know why? That's right, more than 200 years ago, my father signed a confidentiality agreement with Lin Chongqing. This agreement continues until I am here, and it will continue in the future. The extreme ice demon insects that return to Earth will never know the true situation on Earth." As soon as the words came out, the Light King's eyes widened in disbelief, and then his eyes were filled with indignation. Crimson Moon's eyes flashed, and she turned her head to look coldly at the Demon Emperor. It seemed that she was ready to make a move at any time. Dean was a little surprised. He didn't expect there to be such secret. He suddenly felt that it was a little ridiculous when he thought of the tragic battle at the border. The generals and soldiers at the bottom were fighting passionately, playing out scenes of tear-jerking war stories, but they didn't know that the highest rulers at the top had already secretly colluded with each other. Then, what was the meaning of these sacrificed warriors? He felt that the value measurement in this was too cruel, too ruthless. Like a pyramid system, when there was a pyramid system, there would be a situation where the higher levels looked down on the lower levels. When life was no longer equal, there would be a tragedy, a tragedy. When one was born into such a group and existed in such a form of life, perhaps they were already destined to face such things, to bear such things, to obey, or to rule. The Demon Emperor seemed to know the killing intent in Crimson Moon's eyes, and his expression still didn't change. He indifferently said, however, the confidentiality agreement only helps Lin Chongqing keep his existence a secret, and Lin Chongqing will also pay the corresponding price. Outside of this agreement, it doesn't prevent us from fighting each other. Just like the two dragon masters of the Fire Dragon country, they were also one of the people who signed the confidentiality agreement. But now? The Candle Dragon Master is dead. Crimson Moon still looked at him coldly, and her killing intent didn't decrease in the slightest. The Light King said angrily, "Since you guys conspired to sign the confidentiality agreement, who knows whether you guys conspired to sign another agreement? For example, get rid of us first? Let us kill each other, then you guys clean us up and finally fight each other?" The Demon Emperor said indifferently, "If you guys are worried, you can get rid of Lin Chongqing first. What do you mean by killing each other? What a joke. Are you guys on the same side? If it weren't for the fact that you all have ulterior motives, how could you have been provoked by Lin Chongqing's words?" The Light King choked slightly and his face turned purple. "Don't think I don't know what you're planning. You already knew about Crimson Moon's power, and you used her to deal with me. No matter which one of us dies, you'll take the dead person's body and reach the perfect life state you've been pursuing." The Demon Emperor sneered. "Unfortunately, plans can't keep up with changes. I'm guessing that you, Lin Chongqing, have the same plan? You already knew that this little brother has a special physique, and isn't an ordinary king. You want us to get rid of him first and then take his body. That way, none of us will be a match for you. The Demon Emperor suddenly changed the topic to Lin Chongsheng. Ice Bird was slightly startled, but she didn't deny her identity at the moment. She snorted and said, "This person isn't from our federation, but from your empire. Otherwise, how would the new Crimson Moon King know him?" Seeing that the Demon Emperor wanted to hide their relationship, Dean was moved, but he didn't immediately jump out to expose it. Although it would be a slap to Lin Chongsheng's face, it wouldn't be good for him either. Perhaps Lin Chongsheng had also expected this, so he had the confidence to say so. The Demon Emperor glanced at Dean. Seeing that Dean was indifferent, he frowned slightly, seeming to be a little disappointed, but this emotion didn't stay on his face for a second. He changed the topic and said, "In any case, my suggestion now is to get rid of this great sage demonic insect first. As for the next matter, we'll talk about it later." Crimson Moon glanced at Dean, who was next to her. After a moment of silence, she nodded. Dean also expressed that he had no objection. Ice Bird said indifferently, "That's good. For Lin Chongsheng, the King of Light must be killed, or he would be exposed. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to get Dean's body to deal with the current situation, the King of Light would have been the first target of his provocation." Seeing that they had decided on a plan in a few words, the King of Light was so angry that his whole body was shaking and his face was flushed. What was his identity? He was the king of the empire, and he was also the great sage demonic insect. No matter which identity he had, he was incomparably noble. But now he was sentenced to death by a few words, and he didn't even have a chance to interject. This feeling made him so aggrieved that he wanted to self-destruct, but he knew that even if he did his best, he couldn't kill the Demon Emperor, Crimson Moon, and the others. "Kill!" Dean shouted softly. Crimson Moon, who was next to him, didn't take the initiative to attack. Dean's previous crazy counterattack had left a lingering fear in her heart, and she was worried that the King of Light would do the same to her. Chapter 1195. Whoever wants to kill me will die with me. The Light King's face was distorted. If everyone present was a king, he could still escape, but the Demon Emperor, Crimson Moon, and even Lin Chongsheng, who was eyeing him covetously, were not simple characters. Even if he revealed his true form, he would not be able to escape death. He could only fight with all his might and drag one of them down with him to sacrifice for his race. Seeing that the Demon Emperor was the first to rush over, he immediately locked his eyes on the Demon Emperor. His whole body suddenly blazed with light, like a high-energy incandescent lamp, illuminating the world in pure white. It was dazzling and dazzling. Even with Dean's powerful vision, he felt that his line of sight was pure white. Countless light particles completely covered his line of sight, and he could not penetrate it. He felt as if his body was molting, and a burning sensation appeared on his body. Counterattack before death? Dean thought of the terrifying movement of the Candle Dragon Lord's counterattack before death. His eyes moved, but he did not retreat to dodge. Instead, he tried his best to turn his eyes and search the surroundings. 7 or 8 eyeballs suddenly drilled out of his shoulders, neck, cheeks, and other parts of his body. They kept rotating, and from the intense white light, a vague figure was gradually filtered out. Based on the smell, it was Crimson Moon. Whoosh! He suddenly pounced forward. At the moment before the attack, he did not reveal any killing intent. His expression was extremely calm, and the strange eyeballs on his body were also very quiet. However, when he was within 10 feet of her, the crazy killing intent could no longer be contained and leaked out. His muscles suddenly squirmed, and terrifying sharp blades shot out from inside. They shot out from all parts of his body, including the parts of his neck where the eyeballs grew. The eyeballs closed, and the structure changed instantly, shooting out sharp blades. Poochie! The sound of flesh being cut and pierced rang out, and hot blood splashed all over his face. Dean's eyes narrowed. He saw that Crimson Moon's figure had been pierced, but she strangely turned into a distorted smoke, and quickly floated to another place. She once again turned into a humanoid appearance, but a large amount of black fog burst out from her body, covering her whole body completely, and she disappeared in the black fog. Go to hell! Suddenly, a crazed roar came from another direction. Dean's hair suddenly stood up, and he felt a sharp blade cutting his neck. Death was approaching, and his brain even stiffened for a moment, stopping thinking. But this moment was extremely short. When he reacted, he immediately turned his body illusory, distancing himself from the direction of danger. Only then did he have time to look. He saw the intense white light shrink instantly, turning into an extremely compressed light beam, and suddenly pierce through the slender figure of the Demon Emperor, from his back, through the entire sky, and seemed to trace to the other end of the horizon. This scene was more terrifying than all the laser cannons he had ever seen. Dean was startled for a moment. The white light in his line of sight gradually disappeared. He saw that the King of Light had changed from a handsome young man to a white-haired old man in the blink of an eye. It seemed that the blow had completely squeezed out his life energy. While he was still in shock, his other eyeball noticed a cloud of black fog rushing toward him from the other side of his line of sight. Dean quickly recovered. He didn't pay attention to the situation of the Demon Emperor. The length and width of the blades rapidly increased. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a giant with sharp blades. To be precise, he was a giant humanoid monster. The back of his hands and arms were curved sharp blades that looked like dragon thorns or sharp knives. He roared and rammed into the black mist. His sharp blade glowed red and burst into flames, tearing the black mist apart in an instant, revealing Crimson Moon, who looked like she was made of ink. The black mucus on her face faded, revealing a pale and somewhat ugly face. She stared at Dean with resentment and murderously said, "How dare you sneak attack me? No one can save you today." Dean didn't say a word and attacked crazily. The burning blades turned into thousands of cold lights that covered Crimson Moon's body. Crimson Moon roared. Her originally crisp female voice became hoarse at this moment, like a mad beast, without the slightest shadow of a human voice. The next moment, her body changed. Her arms and legs bent into multi-segmented claws, and 12 black wings grew out of her back, but there was a thick mucous membrane between the wings. An unusually indifferent face appeared behind her head. Dean knew this face. It was the disappeared burrow. Dean was startled. He seemed to think of something and felt cold. He said in a deep voice, "You're not Crimson Moon. You're Biolello." "You're wrong. I'm both her and Biolello." Crimson Moon was no longer standing upright. Instead, she was crawling on the ground. The one who spoke was Bolo's female voice. Although it was a man's face, it was Crimson Moon's female voice. Our memories merged into one. She devoured me. Little did she know that I had already expected her to flip through my memories. I deliberately sent her to her death. Only in death can we merge into one. My Dana and I will never be separated. Her voice was full of affection towards the end. Dean sneered. Your Dana died a long time ago. Crimson Moon is just a substitute you made. Although I don't know how you devoured her memories, this body is still hers. She was just confused by your memories and thought you were you. Hee, don't even think about using such words to disturb my thoughts. You don't understand my current state at all. Even though Crimson Moon is a replica that I created, she has inherited all of Dana's memories. Memories are the core that separates each person. Outer appearance is just flesh and blood that hasn't rotted, it's all the same. The reason why you are you is because your memories tell you that you are you. If it were any other memories, would you still be you? Crimson Moon sneered. She wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, she continued to demonize her body. Her physique became bigger and bigger. Memories are just the past. Only when the body and memories combine can your future thoughts be your own. Dean looked at her coldly and said, Your Dana died a long time ago. You intercepted her memory and gave it to Fei Yu, but you only preserved her past. But if Fei Yu's memory is mixed with your Dana's, will it still be your complete Dana? You're just deceiving yourself. Bullshit! Crimson Moon suddenly flew into a rage, and Bo Luo's face emitted Crimson Moon's shrill female voice. You don't understand anything, you're just a lucky child who was blessed by the heavens, a divine fetus that was created by them. You obtained everything from the very beginning, so how can you possibly understand me? How could you understand how perfect my current state is? You don't know what is eternal and what is resurrection. You're just a waste who got a tool but doesn't know how to use it. I'm going to eat you and let you feel what is true perfection in my body. You're crazy, Dean sneered. I don't know what you set up in your own memory to hypnotize Crimson Moon's memory and make her think that you've usurped her body. But you're dead. You died when she killed your body. You're just a clown living in her memory. Your Dana died a long time ago. You've left nothing behind. Real Crimson Moon, wake up! At the end of his words, he suddenly roared. Crimson Moon's movements suddenly stiffened, but she soon giggled like a ghost chewing on a bone. You want to disturb my thoughts. Little do you know that I've been giving you opportunities to stall for time. Now, it's time for you to die. Chapter 1196. How would you know that I'm also deliberately letting you stall for time? Dean grinned slightly. Facing the white silk threads that were sweeping across the sky, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a raging flame. This flame was like a waterfall pouring down. The fire was monstrous, rolling half of the sky. The first white silk that touched the flame was quickly ignited, burned, and turned into ashes before it had time to exert its effect. Through his X-ray vision, Dean had already seen the structure of Crimson Moon's body. This white silk was both sharp and soft. His splitting blade couldn't cut it, but the white silk could entangle his body and cut it into countless pieces. If it was just a king who was good at physical attacks, this move alone was enough to easily kill him, but the flame that Dean brewed just happened to restrain the white silk. Dean had long known that Crimson Moon's core ability was Dream Breeder. This should be the ability she was most proficient in. Although people like Crimson Moon, who had a divine body, could control their body to learn any ability, no matter how many abilities she learned, she would still be proficient in the first ability she mastered. Just like his control of the splitting blade, he was most partial to it. Dream Breeder was the evolution of Black Weaver. Its original form was that of a spider. Black Weaver was good at drilling into the ground and spitting silk, which was inclined to escape and support. Dream Breeder's ability was many times optimized in this aspect. Not only could it drill into the ground and spit silk, but it also came with a strange neurotoxin that could see other people's memories and make others fall into confusion, like entering a dream. This poison was extremely strong and incurable. A little bit of it would be infected. If one was attacked by her poisonous thorns in battle, they would immediately be confused. Even if it was only a short confusion, it would be fatal. However, this kind of poison attack for a divine body like Dean, as long as he thought of a way to prevent it, he would not be infected. He could build a barrier in his body to isolate the poison. However, Crimson Moon obviously optimized the basic ability of the Dream Breeder. Whether it was the white silk or the core poison attack, it was very different from the ordinary Dream Breeder. This poison was like a corrosive acid, and the speed of erosion was enough to quickly destroy the barriers that Dean built. However, the power of the flame was huge. As one of the basic elements of the world, as long as the temperature was high enough, in theory, it could burn everything. Countless white threads were burned by the flames and quickly melted. Although the white threads were extremely tough, they were quickly burned to ashes like water in front of the flames. On the back of Crimson Moon's head, Burrow's face sank, but he didn't stop spitting silk. But this time, the silk was divided into 3 directions. One part of the white silk rushed towards the flames. This part of the white silk was covered with a dense cold air. The other 2 parts of the white silk extended extremely long, one on the left and one on the right, and outflanked Dean like 2 snow-white long ribbons, forming a circle with a diameter of several hundred meters. The white silk quickly widened and formed a large ball, wrapping Dean and Crimson Moon inside. It was 1,000 meters in diameter. The white silk secreted a strange waxy yellow mucus. When the flickering flame touched the waxy yellow mucus, it was instantly extinguished. The blazing heat brought about by the raging flames soared several times as the environment was sealed. It was as if they were in a sea of fire. Although the temperature had risen, Dean frowned. He immediately understood Crimson Moon's intention. She wanted to isolate the air and wait for the air inside the white silk ball to burn out. Then the flame would be extinguished, and he would be at her mercy. This huge ball of white silk was like a giant cocoon. Humph! Dean snorted coldly. He suddenly turned around and slashed at the inner wall of the white silk with a blazing red cutting blade. The white silk ball was soft to the touch. His cutting blade quickly sank deep into it. The thickness of the white silk ball was much thicker than what he had seen before. In this short period of time, the latter had not only constructed such a large white silk ball, but also expanded its thickness by more than 100 times. Moreover, his X-ray vision was blocked by the waxy yellow mucus. He couldn't continue to penetrate it. His line of sight was actually yellow, and the swaying made him a little dizzy. He had to stop using his X-ray vision to look at the white silk ball. This was originally intended to be used to deal with Iphonius and that old dog Lin Chongsheng. I didn't expect to use it on a semi-finished product like you. You deserve to die 1,000 times. Even if you die 1,000 times, you won't be pitied. Burrow sneered. Dean's face was gloomy. He waved a few more cutting blades, but they sank deep into the white silk ball again. When he tried to pull them out, there seemed to be thousands of hands inside the white silk ball. They grabbed the blades, and he couldn't pull them out. It's useless. No matter how sharp your attack is, you can't break the divine cage that I've carefully prepared. I've painstakingly thought of this specifically to deal with you God's fetuses. No matter how many abilities you have, no matter how many changes you have, you can't escape from my divine cage. Burrow laughed sinisterly. At this time, the flame inside the white silk ball was rapidly shrinking. Behind the flame, Crimson Moon's figure was faintly discernible. Her body had merged with the white silk ball, and only her head was sticking out, as if it was embedded in the inner wall of the white silk ball. The face on this head was Burrow's. Dean tried to heat up the blades that were sunk deep into the white silk ball. The powerful tension suddenly loosened, but the next moment, he suddenly felt the heat in the blades quickly disappear. It's useless. My divine thread can absorb heat. Unless you can instantly erupt with the kind of heat like the Candle Dragon Lord did before his death, you can't destroy my divine cage. However, if you want to erupt with that kind of heat, your thoughts will also be burned until they become blurred. Stop thinking, just like the Candle Dragon Lord, you'll become a human-shaped sun and keep burning until your body's energy is completely exhausted and you dissipate between heaven and earth, leaving nothing behind. Burrow laughed strangely. While he was speaking, the flame that Dean had previously spat out gradually extinguished. The inside of the ball became pitch black, and the air had been burned out. The darkness didn't affect Dean's vision. He saw that where Crimson Moon's body was, the inner wall of the white silk ball was slightly squirming, and sharp white silk stretched out from inside, aiming at him like a spear. Without flames, this white silk cage was Crimson Moon's domain, and she ruled over everything. For Dean and Crimson Moon, the temporary lack of oxygen was just a trivial matter, and it didn't affect their movements. Do you think that without air there won't be flames? Dean suddenly opened his mouth, with a bit of ridicule in his eyes. If that was the case, the fire dragon country would have long been extinct. Burrow sneered slightly. Then continue to consume your body. Without needing her to say anything, Dean had already released the oxygen stored in his blood. At the same time, he constructed a large amount of gas in his body and released it along with the oxygen in his blood. At the same time, the flames also illuminated the entire divine cage. The erect white silk around Crimson Moon was like a viper, and there was no lack of them. She just looked at Dean with a sneer, waiting for him to exhaust his body. Dean also knew that this wasn't a long-term solution. He couldn't create gas endlessly. Taking advantage of the moment when the flames counterbalanced Crimson Moon, he demonized several sharp blades on his body, and each blade was suffused with cold air. Water couldn't cut it, but ice could. Puff, puff, puff. The ice blades instantly penetrated the white silk ball, and the released cold air also filled the air in an instant, freezing and hardening the white silk ball. Dean once again waved several scorching red blades and cut the frozen white silk ball, immediately cutting open a few cracks. Dean's eyes lit up, and he immediately increased his strength. Several of the sharp blades deeply embedded in the white silk ball also released cold air, expanding the frozen area. "Ha! Do you think that if I think of flames, I won't consider ice?" Burrows suddenly sneered. The next moment, Dean felt the frozen white silk ball quickly soften, as if the cold air inside had been sucked out. Chapter 1197. Dean frowned and suddenly thought of something. His face changed and became completely gloomy. He cut off the dozens of sharp blades and allowed them to be absorbed into the swamp-like white silk blade wall. He didn't attack again and quietly waited for the flames to extinguish. His mind was quickly thinking of a new method. "Why didn't you continue to attack?" Burrow narrowed his eyes and grinned. "It seems that with your intelligence, you've already noticed it. Unfortunately, it's useless even if you know. It will only make you more desperate. You're like a flying insect struggling on a spider's web, watching the spider crawl over but unable to move." Dean was silent and didn't have any extra thoughts to pay attention to her. What Crimson Moon said was right. His current situation was like a flying insect on a spider's web, imprisoned in this white silk blade wall. The previous few attacks also made him aware of the uniqueness of this white silk blade wall. No wonder it was called God's Cage by Crimson Moon. It was indeed worthy of this name. Even he couldn't think of a way to break it in a short time. Didn't you notice that even if you didn't attack, your life energy is quietly flowing away? My divine cage has several layers. The flames and ice that you released before were all absorbed and stored by me. Just my own energy is enough to eat you up, not to mention that you gave me so much energy. It's a pity that you're too smart and noticed it too early. Otherwise, if you attacked me a few more times, my divine cage would be even more secure." Burrow's smile was very exaggerated, but his eyes were extremely cold. He was like a cold-blooded animal looking at its prey. Dean suddenly felt that his body's heat was escaping bit by bit. The surroundings were dark, but this darkness wasn't just visual darkness. It was real dark matter. Even under the sunlight, it still existed. This darkness was like the black fog released by Crimson Moon, but the density wasn't as strong. So he didn't notice it because he was focused on the white silk blade wall. But even if Burrow didn't say it, he would soon notice it after he stopped attacking. This is the combination of Burrow's dark ability. It's really scary when the two abilities reach the extreme. Dean's eyes were dignified. His eyes quickly decomposed the dark matter around him. At the same time, his body quickly simulated the decomposed dark matter and released a dark matter mucous membrane to protect himself like a bubble. The dark matter gradually nibbled away at his body, but his heart gradually sank. The thickness of Crimson Moon's divine cage was beyond his imagination. Just the splitting blade alone would not be able to tear it apart, and if he attached energy to the blade, the energy would be absorbed by the white silk blade wall. Simply put, both physical and energy attacks would be rendered useless, and energy attacks would instead become Crimson Moon's nourishment. From this point of view, his current situation was practically a dead end. However, he didn't just sit and wait for death. After a short moment of consideration, before the flames were extinguished, he abruptly transformed into a huge blade that was tens of meters long and fiercely slashed at the white silk blade wall. The blade quickly broke the surface of the blade wall. After penetrating 7 or 8 meters, it gradually lost its strength. The power of the blade was weakened layer by layer, unable to pierce deeper. He wanted to use brute force to push deeper, but he felt that the resistance was stronger. He barely pushed deeper for less than 2 meters, and there was a feeling of exhaustion. However, from the feeling of the blade, there was still no sign of piercing through. When he wanted to pull back the blade, it was already stuck. A large amount of sticky force pulled it out, and he couldn't drag it out. He could only cut off the part of the blade that had penetrated deep, and the rest of the blade retracted back into his body. The next moment, a ruby-like substance appeared outside his body. All the splitting blades on his body retracted and turned into crystals that covered his body. At the same time, a few crystals extended from his body, shining obliquely at each other. Huh! On the other side, when Burrow saw the strange appearance of Dean, he reacted extremely quickly. He seemed to have thought of something, and the white silk blade wall around Dean suddenly slightly wriggled. Dean didn't have time to explore the strange shape of the white silk blade wall. He took a deep breath, and suddenly converged the accumulated energy in his body into a beam. Suddenly, a fist-sized ruby ejected from his forehead. The beam of light passed through the complex structure of the ruby, and instantly ejected more than a dozen times, reaching the limit that the ruby structure could bear. It rushed out of the body, and was refracted by several concave crystals that Dean had magically transformed into. Finally, the last concave crystal was smashed, and turned into a bucket-thick red beam of light that flew towards the white silk blade wall in front of him. Puff! The beam of light instantly penetrated the white silk blade wall, and suddenly pierced a huge hole, but the white silk blade wall also instantly wriggled crazily. Dean saw that the beam of light penetrated tens of meters deep, and then suddenly dissipated. The energy was exhausted, and at the end of the depth was still the white silk blade wall. It didn't penetrate. Dean felt a chill in his heart. It was somewhat unbelievable, but the next moment he suddenly thought of something. His whole body suddenly went berserk, and a cutting blade extended out, and hit the white silk blade wall hundreds of meters away. Bang! More than a dozen cutting blades like gears plunged into the rippling white silk blade wall, and suddenly penetrated 4 or 5 meters deep, and then suddenly loosened, unexpectedly piercing through the cage. Dean's eyes burst out with light, and just as he was about to drill out, he felt soft and sticky white silk blade wall from the side, covering the front end of the cutting blade wall. His eyes were red, and he tried to push out, but the deeper he sank, as if it would never end. Damn it! He roared violently, but reason controlled him to timely cut off the connection with the cutting blade wall, and withdraw. That was close. On the other side, Burrow took a light breath, and put away the strange smile on his face. He looked at Dean with some admiration. Almost let you escape, but fortunately I made up in time. Unfortunately, you shouldn't be able to launch that kind of attack a second time, right? Even if you can, I'm already prepared, and I won't give you any chance. Dean's face was extremely ugly. Previously, when the solar ray did not penetrate the white silk blade wall, he felt it was unbelievable, but soon he remembered that this cage was woven from the spider silk that Crimson Moon spat out. These spider silk were like her hands and feet, and they rotated according to her thoughts. In other words, the previously balanced and round cage was weakened at that moment, and shifted to the place where the solar ray attacked. That was the weakest moment of the divine cage, and when he reacted and attacked, Burrow had also reacted and made up for it in time. All of this happened in an instant. If he could react 1,000th of a second earlier, maybe he would have rushed out at this moment. Originally, it would take a little more time to kill you, but you just gave me such a strong energy, and it accelerated your death. Burrow smiled. The two idiots outside are still quietly watching and don't want to help. They are afraid of wasting their strength. They overestimate you and underestimate me. Once I eat you, my body's energy will surpass theirs, and at that time, they will pay the price for standing idly by. I will avenge you. Dean clenched his teeth, and his heart was incomparably angry. If the Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing attacked at this moment, it would be very easy to tear this cage apart, but they were confronting each other, and no one was willing to help. The possibility of him being saved was almost zero. When you ran away from me, I wanted to let you live, but you brought about your own death. Now from a small abyss, you have become a demigod that surpasses the king, but unfortunately, you were still ended by me. Burrow said with a smile, "This is your fate. You are a supporting role, and no matter how hard you work, you will eventually become my stepping stone, and help me to reach an unprecedented level of life." As he spoke, all the white silk inside the white silk blade wall stood up, like hundreds of millions of white needles, and aimed at Dean. Dean was silent. Perhaps it was his nature, or perhaps it was because of his experiences over the years, but he always felt that he was rational at all times. So although he was angry, he knew that the Demon Emperor and Lin Chongqing wouldn't help him, so he saw the desperate situation he was in. Unwilling, sullen, angry, all kinds of emotions intertwined in his heart, but more than that, he was unwilling. He had suffered so much, abandoned everything, and struggled until now, but he was going to die here. It was like all the villains in the story would eventually die. Was it because he had done too many bad things, and killed too many innocent people, so he couldn't escape retribution? But who would retribution Crimson Moon? The Demon Emperor or Lin Chongqing? Then, who would retribution them? Although unwilling, he knew that he didn't have the opportunity to find the answer. What made him painful was that he would never have the opportunity to see her again, even before he died. Without him in this world, who would take care of the corpse king that wandered alone in the wilderness? Compared to the millions of lives in this world, how insignificant were the two of them? In the end, I'm still a loser. Dean bowed his head, sighed, and smiled bitterly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless white silk needles flew over, as if they would instantly poke him into a hornet's nest. But when he bowed his head, a strong flame spread out from his body, and then swept out, turning into a soaring flame that soared into the sky, and instantly enveloped his whole body. The monstrous flame burned to a height of hundreds of meters, and the flame was about to touch the white silk blade wall above him. The white silk needles that were ejected from the surroundings were immediately burned to ashes by the flame, and all of them were submerged. Continue to struggle. Burrow licked his lips, and his eyes showed excitement. At this time, the flame on Dean's body didn't stop, but turned into a flame tornado, and he stood in the center of the storm. The flame became bigger and bigger, and the temperature became higher and higher. The surrounding waxy yellow mucus on the white silk blade wall seemed to dry up. Burrow frowned, and the excitement on his face disappeared. He faintly felt that something was wrong. The temperature of the flame continued to rise, and there was no sign of stopping. He suddenly realized Dean's thoughts, and his face distorted in anger. "Do you want to burn yourself to ashes like Candle Dragon Lord?" Dean calmly stood in the center of the flame tornado and quietly looked at Burrow. "Unfortunately, I can't kill you, but at least I can make you suffer heavy losses." "Beast!" Burrow roared, his voice hysterical. "Hurry up and stop. I can let you live." "No need." Dean gently looked at him and slowly closed his eyes. He felt the blood and bones in his body burning. He controlled the cells to divide, and continued to demonize the limbs as fuel. The temperature of his body continued to rise, and it was getting more and more exuberant. His body was exceeding the limit again and again as the demonized limbs were used as fuel. His heart violently beat as if it was about to be torn apart. The pain made him feel suffocated. At this point, even if his heart exploded, it would not be surprising to him. He tried to turn his heart into a burning flame, but he found that he could not control the change. It was like an independent thing in his body, a parasite on his body. "I hope I can burn you too," Dean muttered. "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.